Hello, it's Three Legs, Four Wheels. I'm Lee.
I'm Chris.
I'm Dan.
I'm back.
Shut up.
You missed me then.
Just give the listeners that extra fright there. Just, a little bit of silence and then Lee opening his mouth rather than Paul. No, Paul is back.
I am back. I am here. I am nearly recovered.
And promise next week we'll go back to normal. We just thought we'd give you a little bit of a scare there. I thought it was that was good. Nice one, Lee. That worked well.
Yeah, I was sat there in silence waiting for somebody to jump in and do that.
Yeah. I'm used to sneaking up behind the people and speaking to them, but usually they're asleep in their bedrooms, and it's not to 60,000 people.
This is not Musty Audio. This is Three Legs, Four Wheels.
Musty Audio is my other podcast, which you can go and subscribe to right now.
Absolutely.
We'd rather you subscribe to it after you'd finished listening to this.
Yes.
Well, yeah, they can come back.
What if they don't?
I'm gonna for your guys' sake.
Just because Felipe Massa keeps coming back.
Hang on, wait. Paul, you were in hospital last week.
I was in hospital this time last week.
I was quite diplomatic and just said you couldn't be here last week.
Yes, because
Tell the people what you did.
I have torn the rotator cuff in my right shoulder.
Ow.
And it hurt.
Yes.
And I'm not as drugged up as I was last week as well. So
Was that before or after tearing the rotator cuff?
A little from column A and a little from... Ooh, look at the colours, man.
Well, what colours are they? You're colourblind. We've already established this tonight.
I now understand 50 Shades of Grey. Oh, God. Shall we talk about
Is this how you tore your rotator cuff?
Let's talk about Formula 1. That's what we're here to do.
Yes. Let's do that.
Yeah. We have just had a Brazilian... Oh, hang on, we're back to 50 Shades.
A Brazilian Grand Prix.
Well done, Paul.
Yeah.
I approve.
Let's have a look through, shall we? Brazilian Grand Prix. It's a tough one to do team by team.
Well, I think rather than doing team by team at first, there was quite a few other things that were going on away from the track,
especially in the build up to the race.
Yeah. For starters, the security around the circuit and around the general Sao Paulo area left a lot to be desired.
There was
couple of instances of armed attacks.
Yeah, the Mercedes team bus was held up, weren't they, at gunpoint? Guns were held to heads, apparently, and all passports, money, phones, etc. were handed over. No one was injured, and they were allowed to drive off.
Oddly enough, I think that was similar to how Bottas got re-signed.
Possibly. I couldn't possibly say for sure, but that's
halfway through the season it would have made sense, wouldn't it?
There was also an FIA bus that was that had a gun tapped on the window, as in please stop. And the press release was that they managed to force their way through stationary traffic. I think, Dan, you said basically that means pavement.
I'm assuming pavement,
yeah.
And Pirelli bus as well.
They then, of course, gave themselves a 10-second penalty for exceeding track limits.
Exceeding road limits, yeah, and nobody waved blue flags at the side of the road. But all joking aside, it's good that nobody was hurt, although I must echo the sentiments of some of the drivers who spoke out about it and said, look, how long we got to keep doing this till someone gets hurt? Security really needs to be stepped up.
I mean, it's all fun and good giving the drivers and the team principals and the top brass in the FIA security, but a Grand Prix is more than just those people.
Well, don't forget, a couple of years ago, people tried to abduct Jenson Button as missus, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, how did you get out of the country after that?
It wasn't me, but I did almost go full on Taken.
You will find that person and you would have killed them. Because you have that special set of skills with a paintbrush.
But yeah, it's I mean when it comes to security issues, things really do need to get looked at, because we get these reports every year.
Yeah.
It's a different way of life in Brazil, obviously, and it's how do you solve it?
Well, the thing is, Mexico. There's a similar issue in Mexico, but the way it was dealt with in Mexico City, outside the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez, was that the police presence was massive, and there was a an organised route for everyone to leave the circuit, where there was, don't divert from that route, and there was huge police presence all the way along that route until they got out of the areas where it was likely that something bad could happen, and got to their hotel safely.
North America.
Well, don't even know about that. To be quite honest with you, I don't know about that. But and in Sao Paulo, that police presence was just not there. Apparently, it was police escorts for, as Paul just said, the top brass of the FIA. Drivers and.
I think Will
and
Buxton tweeted that it was a few hours after the race and all the police had gone, but there's still the teams packing down.
Yeah, and.
The ones with all the expensive stuff that they take with them all the time.
And there were actually a few track experiences after the race. In that drivers, ex-drivers were taking some privileged paddock club members, etc., on laps of the circuit, or doing donuts by the grandstand. The grandstands were empty; everybody had gone. But
including police and security.
Well, no, that's the thing. Well, exactly. But the thing is, if you've got people who are able to be in the paddock club, it's quite likely that they'll have quite valuable items on them, and it's not worth their safety having to hand over these valuable items purely because there's a lack of security afterwards. Security should be an afterthought.
Yeah. Can we just blame the promoter?
Well, the promoter apparently...
Not apparently.
Well...
The promoter is.
The promoter was and is for the Brazilian Grand Prix a certain Mr. Bernie Eccleston.
So can we just blame the promoter?
Yeah, who was there on official F1 business, despite the fact he has been advised to stay away from races. He couldn't really stay away from Interlagos because he is the promoter of that race.
And it's his local race. Now he lives there.
He lives in Brazil now.
He's got a cow and coffee farm or something.
Oh, fine, fair enough.
That'd be funny. I like Brazil. It's a good race.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, but the circuit's grand. But if it's too dangerous to go and have a Formula One race there, then we shouldn't have a Formula One race there.
There are places where you wouldn't think about starting one.
Yeah.
However good the circuit was.
So, and when you have
under the current regime, you wouldn't think of starting one. Under the previous one, who knows?
The
Grand Prix of Fallujah could be happening any time.
Well, we don't want another situation. I mean, it was obviously totally different to. Was it? Where am I thinking of?
I don't know. What you're thinking of, or where
you're
thinking
of.
It was
the night race. Why can't I think of that?
Bahrain.
Yeah, where the whole reason that ended up being a night race was so we couldn't see what was going on outside of the circuit.
It was part of the.
That was part of the thinking behind it. Yeah, because there was a year it didn't happen when they had all the protests.
Yeah.
Now they just make it so that you can't see the protests,
and then they don't leave it. Everyone goes into the circuit and nobody leaves, if I'm right. All the teams and drivers,
it's on lockdown until
they stay in the circuit.
You've got the whole complex.
But the thing is, that's Bahrain, and that's Bahrain security. Interlagos was lacking that, and has been lacking that in previous years. There was even a year where Bernie Eccleston got punched in the face, wasn't there, for in Sao Paulo?
It's probably quite
he got mugged, but he didn't have an awful lot on him at the time. The
rest of it was just resting offshore.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
You ever tried to find a wallet for gold bullion?
Possibly. Yeah.
Why do you think he walks stooped over like that?
He's not actually that short. It's just it weighs him down so much.
Compacted his spine.
It is unfortunate, but it can't carry on at the same time. And I'm with Lee on that. If people's safety, nobody should have a gun put to their head for their valuables to be handed over at a global sporting event. And
or in any situation.
Well,
really.
In any situation.
If it was your job, you wouldn't go, would you?
No, of course
not. If it was your job and they were going to send you somewhere for a weekend and say, it's pretty dangerous, sorry about this, Dave. Dave would go fuck yourself.
And the thing is as well, that could be quite harrowing. I could completely understand why you might not get over that straight away. And the very next day you have to go back to that place and do your job again, knowing that you've got to leave again without that police escort later on. Mm-hmm. Once more, you've got to do it again. That's going to be playing on your mind. You may not be able to perform well in your job. Could have a negative impact and outcome on the sport.
You might get shot in
Like
the
a
head and not be able to perform well in the world.
Yeah, correct, exactly, and that's going to be the thoughts of everybody, entering and leaving the circuit, and it shouldn't be. That's what we're trying to get at, I think.
We've in the Bernie Ecclestone regime, we've had Formula One, like we say, go to countries that it probably shouldn't go to. Now, if a country that Formula One goes to becomes a country that Formula One shouldn't be going to, that's just because it's been there for years, but things have maybe gotten worse.
Well, for example, the German Grand Prix, there's lack of German Grand Prix at the moment.
Yeah.
But if they were going to Germany for the German Grand Prix and suddenly the Nazis took over...
Yeah, not ideal.
No, probably shouldn't go to Germany for the German Grand Prix.
Yeah. Do you know what I think is so bizarre? You know, when you see... I know this isn't Formula One, but for any of our listeners that know what the TT is, when you see old pictures of the TT... like if anyone goes to look for pictures of the grandstand and the swastikas, flying at the grandstand, it just looks so bizarre now because of what that signifies.
Yeah, there
it's
were
really
pictures.
weird.
There were pictures way back in the 30s. There was an actual now famed Nazi TT.
Yeah.
We don't want that sort of in modern day equivalent in Formula One. It's not.
The reason that things like the Halo come in is because it's not worth dying for Formula One.
No,
correct.
It's a sport. It's a game. Everyone's taking part in a big game.
Yeah.
And when guns are being pointed at people's heads, there's a serious risk of dying.
Yes. This is... I can't argue with any of these.
Something needs to be done.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if that's lose the Brazilian Grand Prix, it would be a massive shame. But it wouldn't be a stupid thing to do.
No.
I'm glad Dan's gone. Steve Jobs knows what he's talking about.
Patrons will understand what we're talking about. But it has to change. I think we're all agreed on that.
Yeah, definitely. Another couple of funny things pre-race. The driver's press conference. Kimi was on what can only be described as top Kimi form.
Yeah, they kind of gave up asking Kimi Räikkönen questions after the first couple. He was asked about his... it's been 10-year anniversary since he won his World Championship at Interlagos in a Ferrari. Yeah. How did he feel about that? What were his memories of the days?
It's a bit of a stupid question because he hasn't even been in Formula One for all of them 10 years.
No, exactly, yeah. But he just basically... He said something along the lines of... it was nice at the time, but I don't think about it that much. It doesn't change my life to think about it now. Okay, well, Felipe Massa was your teammate, and he's retiring now. What can you say about Felipe Massa? We'll know if he's retiring again, and we'll know if it's real if he doesn't turn up in Australia next year.
You get the feeling that sometimes when Kimi says stuff, he sits there, it's dead straight face, and inside his head he's gone, fucking nailed it.
Yeah. Yeah. He says that Formula One would be great without the press.
Yeah.
But you kind of got to have the press at Formula One, haven't you? Otherwise, what we do, we wouldn't be able to do it because there'd be no TV coverage.
I don't think Kimi would have as many fans without the press.
No, of course not. No, and none of the Formula One drivers would be as lucrative or the sponsorship that goes through Formula One without the press. But that's what Kimi is, one of those who is there just for the racing.
Yeah.
He's there just to race, and he doesn't care about anything else.
My favourite Kimi quote was a pit interview with him when he came back when he was driving for Lotus, and the woman asked him, sort of saying like, you obviously you quite famously said you didn't want to be involved in Formula One. You're back now. Do you think Formula One's changed? Is that why you've come back to the sport? He says, no, I just understand the bullshit better.
Yes. Very good.
No, I still think the best Kimi Räikkönen interview was you missed the Michael Schumacher presentation. I'm sorry, I was having a shit.
Yeah.
I've just read Mark Priestley's book.
Yeah.
He was a mechanic with McLaren for all of the Räikkönen days and then beyond up to Lewis Hamilton's championship season with him. And you get a real insight into what Kimi Räikkönen's like off the track. Mm-hmm. And he just comes across as a completely different person
I'm sure he is.
when he's got nothing to do with racing. And it's well worth the read.
I was amazed when people were talking the other day about Sebastian Vettel, and it was on the BBC podcast I think I was listening to. And
You listened to another podcast.
yeah, only there. So it just reminds me how good we are.
Fair enough.
And
Is that the BBC podcast that was number 2 in iTunes last week?
that'd be the second best podcast.
Yeah.
But who was number 1 last week?
75% of a good podcast.
There you go.
I'm just like to say that we were number 1. It's funny that, isn't it? Just put it out there. It's funny that.
3 of us were number 1.
Yeah. You know, like sometimes, like for a band to really take off, somebody's got to die.
So basically, you're calling me Bez.
To be perfectly honest, you could have took Kurt Cobain there, but if you want to be Bez, you can be Bez.
Anyway, back to the Formula 1 stuff.
Both probably involve you having to fuck Courtney Love at one point.
Back to the Formula 1 stuff.
As quickly as possible.
Yes.
Sorry.
Should we...
No, just the Vettel thing.
Yeah.
And she was saying, like, apparently there's no confirmed reports whether Sebastian Vettel is married. Some people are saying he's married, some people say he isn't. And there's even reports saying he's got children, but nobody really knows whether he's got children or not.
He doesn't even do social media, does he?
He's managed to keep his life that separate from his racing career. That's fucking amazing. I think it's so admirable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he's he got no social media profile at all whatsoever.
No.
He's not interested in Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. No, the polar opposite of Lewis Hamilton in that respect.
So we can say that Sebastian Vettel isn't a 13-year-old girl.
Well, yeah, no, he's like a 31-year-old racing driver.
But Lewis Hamilton has all the social media profiles of a 13-year-old girl. With slightly more selfies.
You tweet quite a lot. I think there might be... Is popcorn the kettle black the wrong thing to say here?
Possibly, yeah.
Right,
we'll move on.
But you know what I mean.
Because I don't tweet a lot.
You do. You tweet loads. You use 2 profiles.
One of them's for this bloody podcast.
Doesn't matter. You use 2
And
profiles.
it's linked to the Facebook page.
Dan's got his head in his hands.
So we put a new post up on Facebook and it goes out on Twitter.
Yeah, whatever, babe. Hashtag hugs.
With a Z.
Should we maybe review the Brazilian Grand Prix or something like that?
I think Dan's right. I think we should.
Yeah, if I had 2 working arms, I'd be punching you in the face right now.
Why do you need 2? Anyway, Brazilian Grand Prix.
Because I want to punch him twice.
You need at least 1 good one, so you're fucked. But right, let's go.
Right, Haas.
We're starting at the back.
We're starting at the back with Haas. Oh, that stank.
Yeah, it really did. I mean, I actually think Grosjean's penalty was harsh. Anybody else agree? Because he didn't.
I liked Martin Brundle's description of the Grosjean incident. He ran out of road and talent.
Well,
he ran out of road and talent, but at the same time, Esteban Ocon did the same thing.
yeah.
They didn't hit until after they both were spinning. They both spun at the same time. It wasn't that they touched and then they lost control. They didn't touch until after they both lost control because they occupied the outside line, which is the wrong place to be.
It looked like what they were both doing at the same time was braking very late into the corner to slow down more than they should have done because the safety car lights had already come on.
Yeah.
So they were sort of automatically snatching at the brakes, not knowing that snatching at the brakes on the outside of a corner like that isn't the best place to do it. You're probably going to lose the back end of the car, and they just both did it in perfect unison.
Well, there's something else here which I take it none of yous have seen, because it doesn't sound like any of yous have seen it, that the Haas have put another... have protested the points for Grosjean that's on his licence because they think they've given the FIA reason to believe that Grosjean didn't actually lose it. He had a puncture before he hit him.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah.
But how did he get the puncture?
Would it have been the carbon? Would he have gone through any of the carbon fibre at the beginning, when people were hitting each other?
Possibly, yes.
Could have done. He could have hit.
Was he last? Where was he on the grid?
No, he wasn't quite last. He was
because Daniel Ricciardo got hit, I'd have thought Daniel Ricciardo would have been ahead of Grosjean.
Yeah, but who did Daniel Ricciardo get hit by? Stoffel Van Dorn. Who hit Stoffel Van Dorn? Magnussen, yeah.
No, that's what I mean. But if he collected something from that incident,
I think Grosjean was a little bit ahead of them.
But I don't know if he had a
puncture. But it could be on anything.
It didn't look like he had a puncture, to be perfectly honest. None of the footage suggested, and Paul di Resta didn't pick up on it, which is a bit of a giveaway for me because he seems to have a keen old eye.
And you would have thought that the engineers who can see the data of tyre pressures and things like that would have said, "You have a puncture."
Yeah, but I don't believe it should be I don't believe it should be a penalty. In fact, I know Brundle might have said that at first, but I don't think he thought it should have been a penalty either.
At first, at first sight, I thought, Grosjean's hit Ocon there, and Ocon's out, and Grosjean's continued. That's a bit wrong.
Yeah.
But then on seeing a replay later on, it was actually they didn't touch each other.
They were both out of control of their cars.
Yeah. They both took the Lewis Hamilton qualifying line, and it didn't work for them.
Well, I think Ocon was a clear example of. Excuse me. Was the clear example of somebody that was trying to have an accident that accidentally almost made it into an overtake.
Yeah.
I mean, what Grosjean said is he got hit from behind, which caused the puncture. Before he hit Ocon as they both spun. So I mean that's fine. I mean if Haas have the data to prove that Grosjean had a puncture and it wasn't his fault that he lost control of his car, that's great. But still. Not responsible for any part of the accident that Esteban Ocon had. That was entirely his own accident. He was in the middle of the accident when he got caught up in a second one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anybody see Ted's notebook after the coverage?
No.
Apparently, when Ted was talking about Grosjean, he was saying that Grosjean's been a bit better this weekend. He seems to have been a bit less whiny than normal. And from what he hears back in the pit lane, he said the reason that he wasn't in the conversation to replace Kimi isn't because the top teams don't think he's quick enough. He said there's a few teams on the grid that think with a little bit of nurturing that Grosjean could be a much better driver than he seems to be.
Yeah.
But they don't want to because of the team politics
and the whining. Yeah. Magnussen out very early on, and that, as I say, that turn 2 collision, which he appeared to lose control into Stoffel Van Dorn. Van Dorn hit Ricciardo spun round, carbon fibre everywhere. The three of them struggled a little bit. Ricciardo continued.
Yeah.
Van Dorn and Magnussen did not continue.
It's been called a racing incident officially by the stewards, and it was 3 cars trying to get on the same bit of track that was wide enough for one of them.
Yeah, Danny Rick said after the race, I saw a space on the outside of turn 2, so I went for it. I thought I'd left everyone else enough room, but it turns out I didn't.
Yeah.
One of those things.
I do feel that this is a bit of inconsistency, though, because I can't help but think that if...
That's a penalty for Grosjean, but there's no penalty for anyone else in that.
Yeah.
I think with the Grosjean-Ocon incident, there was a lot more space around them. It's not like your typical first corner incident where there's no room and everything's happening at once.
I can't help but feel that if you took Daniel Ricciardo out of that crash and replaced Grosjean with it, Grosjean would have got a penalty.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, I think Grosjean...
I don't think it would have been deserved.
Grosjean gets the penalty because of his reputation.
Yeah.
It's like, somebody's gone out because they've collided
Grosjean.
because they bumped with Grosjean. Must have been his fault.
9 times out of 10, if you see a car peeling off with some sort of damage on it, and it's Grosjean's car, it's
Grosjean had half his T-wing missing during qualifying.
Yeah.
Nobody knows where it went. Grosjean went out on track with a full T-wing, came back in with half a T-wing. Roman, where's half a T-wing on? I don't know.
I like the fact that his car is that pissed off with the whining, it started to disassemble itself on the lap.
So yeah,
it's actually changing from Beaker into Bart Simpson because it's now always I didn't do it.
But yeah, terrible race for Haas. They really need to start picking up points with the midfield battle between them, Renault and Toro Rosso being so tight with one race left. But there's conspiracy theories about. Yes, we know. We can get to that next because I think we're moving on to Toro Rosso next.
You just cut me off, and that was Renault's fault.
Well, it was Renault's fault entirely. Anything that goes wrong is always Renault's fault.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Especially if you are French toast.
Who would have thought?
Unless you're McLaren, then you love Renault.
for now.
I'm quoting you on this one, Chris, but who would have thought Helmut Marko would be the calming voice?
Yeah, I mean, it all kicked off on Saturday morning in Sao Paulo. In passing, in some comments to the media, I don't think it was Cyril Abiteboul. I think it was a more senior figure in Renault themselves. Was just happened to be answering a question about other reliability issues within the sport. And this person in Renault said, "Well, yeah, the Toro Rosso struggled a bit with their engines, but it's the way that they put the
Toro Rosso press release makes out that it was Cyril Abiteboul that said
right. Okay,
that their car was the issue.
But it was the chassis was the chassis doesn't fit with the engine very well. And the way they put it together doesn't work very well in their car. That's why they have reliability problems.
I think Palmer, Ricciardo, Verstappen, probably
Kvyat.
Kvyat was in the was in the Toro Rosso, so any things that went pop in that car.
Has Brendan Hartley actually had a race where he started from where he's qualified without having to have the engine changed?
No, not yet. Neither. The penalties as well, because Gasly had penalties for changes of components this weekend. Gasly actually tweeted. Bear in mind, this is only his third race. Third Grand Prix? Fourth Grand Prix. His fourth Grand Prix, and he's on Twitter. Penalty it's something like that. This is boring. No penalties and V12s, please. So Pierre Gasly has just completely decided he wants to rewrite the sport 4 races into his Formula 1 career. So a brave man, very brave man.
Or it might be 3. I don't know.
I can't remember.
Blame the pink.
I think it's 3.
Is Gasly French?
Yes.
Yeah.
But
I'm not saying like there's a whining theme here, but there's a whining theme.
Technically, Grosjean is Swiss, but
is he? Is he Rosberg again?
Yeah, well, yeah, he's like football. So is Max Verstappen a little bit.
He's half Belgique as well, isn't he?
Well, he's born in Belgium.
Roman Grosjean races under a French license.
Yeah, but he's born in Geneva, which is in Switzerland. So. Yeah, Toro Rosso, Franz Tost decided he was going to put out an official press release.
Sorry, how funny that the guy from Geneva is the one that has all the aggressive actions on track.
The Grosjean convention. But the
yes, Roman, switch to neutral. No.
But what was Francis' official press release? Have you got it up there?
I've got the press release in front of me here. Which
it was kind of angry.
I was sat at the Rock Festival. I was up Saturday, minding my own business. This comes up. Toro Rosso team clarification. I thought, oh well, I'll have a look at this email. This could be interesting. Which was the angriest press release I think I've ever seen from a Formula 1 team. Due to recent accusations made in the media from the team's engine supplier, Toro Rosso wishes to clarify the actual situation regarding their power units. It comes as a big surprise to the team that Cyril Abiteboul has suggested to the media that the problems Toro Rosso suffered with the power unit are primarily team-related, and the way in which the power unit is operated in the STR12 chassis. We would like to clarify that all the MGUH and shaft failures Toro Rosso has recently suffered are not associated with how the team is operating or with how the power unit is integrated in the chassis. Nothing has been changed or altered in this installation during this season other than cooling improvements mid-season. Since the summer break, Toro Rosso has suffered continuous power unit related failures, and the resulting grid penalties has cost the team points and relative positions in the Constructors' Championship. One of the primary reasons for the issues we are seeing is a lack of new power unit parts available. In Toro Rosso's case, the team is constantly having to change parts from one power unit to another during the weekend, and, on many occasions, is forced to run old specification assemblies. The last race in Mexico saw only 2 cars out of 6 finish the race, highlighting the poor reliability. We mustn't forget that they are fighting with Toro Rosso for a better position in the Constructors' Championship. As suggested by Mr. Abiteboul, the situation may not be a coincidence, but is certainly not due to Toro Rosso's car.
So kind of pointing the finger at Renault, saying you're doing this on purpose so that you can beat us in the Constructors' Championship.
Yes.
I would...
Which then, the fallout from that led to Renault threatening, not officially, although saying, well, you know what, well, we could pull the engines for the rest of this weekend, and you could also have no engines for Abu Dhabi either, and then what are you going to do then? To which
Toro Rosso should have replied, are you going to put Palmer back in the car then?
Yeah, because I think Renault forgot for a little bit that they're borrowing Carlos Sainz from Red Bull, and Red Bull could have been like, all right, no engines, no Carlos then. And that could have led to a very sticky situation. There was much,
which would have been worse because under the engine rules, Honda would have had to have supplied Toro Rosso with whatever they had lying around the back of the garage.
Yeah, there was
2 bottles of whiskey and a dead mouse,
which Alonso would prefer in the back of his McLaren.
But
we all would.
There were pictures of Cyril Abiteboul and Helmut Marko talking in the paddock, and it was all very heated discussions. And then this was all during FP3, so before qualifying. And then Helmut Marko actually put out a statement later on that said, "We have never deliberately." We throughout all the successes that the Red Bull organisation have had with Renault, we've never deliberately. We never thought that there's been a deliberate intervention from our engine supplier. Something along those lines. Mm-hmm. Just sort of pour water on it just a little bit. And we waited for something else to bubble over, but it never really did. Again, we saw cameras focusing on Toro Rosso garage and Helmut Marko talking to French Toast, and French Toast shrugging his shoulders. Not really... paying attention to Helmut Marko, kind of like the told-off schoolboy, I suppose. But standing by, there's been no retraction or apology from Franz Tost or Toro Rosso.
No.
So he and the team clearly stand by that press release that they put out on Saturday, which, all right, they've got one more race to do with Renault engines before they switch to Honda. It's going to be there's not going to be a nice leaving party, is there, between the two teams?
I don't think they'll be sending each other Christmas cards.
No.
But then it's kind of the Red Bull organisation as a whole kind of took another shot across Renault's bows later on from Christian Horner, because he was complaining that they were having to run conservative engine modes to preserve their engines.
Yeah, I believe all the Renaults, including the Renault team, turned the engines right down.
I know they had to turn the turbos down because...
and also there's a mileage problem with the Renault engines, which is why Red Bull only run in the last 20 minutes of FP3 now.
I think the Renault teams should... I mean...
it's a Tag Heuer engine, of course.
Yeah, the reason why Toro Rosso are doing this is because they're already got a fucking bee in the bonnet with Renault, and they know they're not supplying them next year, so they think they can say whatever they want. I would suggest that the reason that we're seeing more Renault failures is the fact that they're pushing it more for data for next year. I think all the breakdowns...
May well be.
The more breakdowns you see this year is probably the better for Renault next year.
If that was true of Honda, then Toro Rosso should be winning the World Championship next year.
Well, I mean...
replacing McLaren as the world champions from this year.
Yeah, but Honda fucked it. We know Honda have done it. Like, we know that. That's just a thing. But Renault, it's... Renault make one of the best... Well, it was 3 engines, but, it's at least their engine is comparable to the top two.
They're in the top 3 of Formula 1 engines.
Yeah.
Out of 4.
Yeah.
And the 4th one is Honda.
Well, the thing is, I think it's not beyond the realms of possibility for Renault to update themselves enough to where they can battle with Mercedes and Ferrari next year, where I don't see Honda getting it together at all until they decide that
Renault, what is it? They want to be winning it's podiums next year, race wins 2019, Championship 2020.
Well, that's just their own team, isn't it? They're not saying that about their engine. That's them getting their whole operation
that's them with their own
together.
team, but the engine's obviously part of that package.
Yeah.
So during the race, Brendan Hartley proved his bosses, his newish employers, quite right with their statement by retiring with a power unit failure.
Yeah.
And Pierre Gasly did a very solid job by finishing 12th.
However, didn't I see he crossed the line with no power?
Yes, he ran out of power on the last lap.
Fuel or power?
Power.
So he had to coast over the line?
Yes.
Well, there you go. So both Toro Rossos had power unit failures.
Yeah.
even though Gasly was lucky that his was so close to the end of the race that he managed to, but essentially roll it down the hill.
Yeah, Gasly got full race distance minus the one lap he was behind and 200 metres.
Right, okay, fine.
See, Toro Rosso would have a leg to stand on with this allegation if Red Bull and Renault had been bulletproof all year.
But the Renaults have been going pop.
Yeah.
And the Red Bulls have been going pop.
Yeah, so I think it's just a bit of sourness, I think, from
Toro Rosso. Because they're so close to them in the championship, I think, is that
well,
as well.
no, it's unfair from Abitable because...
To say that it's Toro Rosso...
To say that it's Toro Rosso when the engine goes pop, whatever car it's in.
And that's the other thing we don't know, is we don't know whether Toro Rosso would have preferred to keep Renault engines for next year. Because to me...
Well, they never had any say in it, did they?
No, McLaren wanted Renault engines, and that's when the deal started to why Toro Rosso don't have a Renault engine anymore.
Yeah.
So there's...
And it could be a very silly move yet.
What?
McLaren going Renault and Honda going Toro Rosso from McLaren could be a silly move.
I think it's going to be better for McLaren.
We'll see. But I mean, Toro Rosso during the race...
Renault engines are scoring points. Renault engines have won races this season. When the engine is reliable and works, it works
well.
Fernando Alonso will win at least a race next year.
With that Renault engine.
Almost guarantee it. If the Red Bulls can win a race and...
Fernando Alonso can.
Yeah, I would put a reasonable chunk of money on that McLaren is a better chassis than the Red Bull is. And the Red Bull is a very good chassis.
But is it going to be a better chassis when it's got a Renault engine in it?
No idea, but you'd like to think that if they're able to build those cars, then they're going to be able to build around any adjustments they have to make to fit a new engine into it.
We'll just have to see.
Yeah.
We will.
It's okay, we've got a whole off-season to have this very conversation.
Every week until March.
Yep.
Bring on the speculation.
Join us all winter for speculation podcasts. But so not a great weekend for Toro Rosso on and off the track. Although Gasly's 12th place, fairly solid, given that he's relatively inexperienced in the sport.
Yeah, I'd like to see what Brendan Hartley can actually do with a car underneath him that gets to start in the position that he's qualified in.
He also had electronics problems as well because he lost his radio early on in the race and had to revert to
using pit boards.
Yeah, well, he's on pit boards and then he heard a crackle and decided to check his radio and his team were back.
The only thing I'd say about Brendan Hartley is, and he comes across as being a very nice bloke, but he didn't get into Formula One when he was actually being looked at by teams because no team thought he was good enough. He was dropped from the Red Bull Young Driver program.
Yeah, I think Toro Rosso have gone back to him
because they've got no drivers.
No, it's because he was part of the Toro Rosso Young Driver program, but when they look at the success he's had since he left the Toro Rosso Young Driver program, and then they sort of thought, well, hang on, he came through at the same time as Vettel and Ricciardo. That's maybe not a fair judgment to... He's all right, maybe he's not a Vettel or a Ricciardo, but he's proven himself to be a very good racing driver. We should probably revisit Brendan Hartley.
I think the problem for a Toro Rosso driver is, at the minute, is because that it's going to be the problem for them next year too. It's almost the Manor effect now, isn't it? That the Toro Rosso, when it's a mid-grid team, when it was up with say Force India, it's genuinely on the pace with Force India. It was a very good car to show what your young drivers could do, but it's not a good car now. So it's difficult to see whether any of them are any good. It's the same with Wehrlein, isn't it, in the Selber? We don't know if he's any good because
he's not allowed to show if he's any good because he just doesn't have.
Well, he
doesn't have the car to prove it.
Then again,
but I mean, you look at Toro Rosso last year, and they had a year-old engine.
Yeah.
In last year's car, and they managed to eke out more than they should have done.
Yeah.
With what they had at their disposal.
Yeah.
So this year they've got a proper engine. What the fuck's gone wrong?
Unfortunately, the two good Toro Rosso drivers from the start of last year are now driving different cars.
No, but there seems to be something fundamentally wrong with the design of that car, which would probably lean more towards what Renault is saying about the fact theirs is going pop more. Because it is.
I'm not sure it is going pop more.
No, you're probably right. Actually, it's probably not going pop more. It's probably just they're saying.
Or even if it is,
if you think about Renault engines going pop, it's Verstappen who's been denied.
Yeah.
Palmer as well,
Yeah.
but Verstappen is the one that springs to mind.
Yeah.
Verstappen's been denied wins. Palmer was denied starts.
Yeah.
Starts and points and.
But I'm just looking at the Toro Rosso thinking that, like, at the beginning of the season, we even pointed out how aggressive the back of the car was.
Yeah.
Because we thought the car was going to be really good at one point.
Because it chassis wise, body wise, it looked like a good, well put together package.
Yeah.
And at the beginning of the season, it was holding up all right, but it looks like there's been no development there.
No.
I think Sainz outperformed the car.
Do you think Red Bull are losing interest in having two teams?
Maybe.
Judging by what is Formula One available in their young driver program, yes.
Yeah.
Because I don't actually think they've got anyone that would even get close to getting a super license at the moment. And
I don't think they need to worry about that for the next year or so. And in a year's time, who knows? Sean Galale and Nico Kari might have super licenses and be ready to go and jump in those seats if they need them to.
Yeah, the issue is though, Red Bull as an organisation they've never shied away from changing lineups mid-season. They've done that since the start.
Yeah.
And at the moment, it looks like they are going to be stuck with these four drivers in the two teams for next season. And if one half of it doesn't perform, if Toro Rosso have another bad year, and it turns out that Brendan Hartley isn't as good in an F1 car as he is in a LMP1,
Yeah.
and Pierre Gasly has hit his peak, and his peak's about 12th place, then they could very easily lose interest in running the two teams and just have buy an F2 team and use that as their young driver program.
Well, I see. The thing is, I don't think they even. I mean, it's obviously all the teams have got young driver programs, but how often do we see like teams have a young driver, bring them into the sport, and that driver never actually get into the team that brought them into the sport in the first place. You know, that's going to happen with Pascal Wehrlein. He isn't going to get anywhere near a Mercedes drive, I don't think.
Not yet.
Unless something crazy goes on with them losing faith in Bottas, but I think after this weekend, I think he certainly in qualifying helped himself a lot.
Pascal Wehrlein had quite a strong weekend, and I think he was down. I don't know if his turbo wasn't working, so he had an issue with his car, but he was flying, and then all of a sudden found himself behind Marcus Ericsson again.
Well, what I'm trying to say is that if, let's say, Daniel Ricciardo next year decides he's had enough, he realises he's in Verstappen's Red Bull team, doesn't want to become Mark Webber, and
we get the second occasion of an Australian accent saying not bad for a number two.
I think all of a sudden if he became available, that Bottas's seat would become in jeopardy. So
well, again, they have only signed him for that one year, haven't they?
Now
another 1 year.
Red Bull don't need Toro Rosso because they're proven race and championship winners. So if apparently it came out this weekend that they were very close to signing Fernando Alonso
for the 2010 season, but a deal never came together.
Yeah, but so what I mean is they don't like Mercedes and Ferrari seem to hire the drivers, the best drivers that they can get, whereas Red Bull seem to be, which they've done with Kvyat as well. You know, we've seen in the past that they're more interested, or they were more interested, in getting their drivers into cars.
Yeah, we want to grow our drivers in a test tube. It's just sometimes they forget to put the air holes in.
So when
but don't forget, Mercedes is a pretty young team. They started off with Rosberg and Schumacher.
Oh yeah. I know. I realised that.
Hamilton.
But what I mean is, I think that Red Bull as a team has outgrown having to use its own drivers.
Yeah,
it's an established team in its own right. And they shouldn't be looking at, we could get our junior drivers through. They should be looking at who are the fastest drivers we can possibly get.
Well, I think the advantage for having the junior drivers is money. It's cheaper.
Yeah, it's cheaper.
And also Vettel, Ricciardo, that's not a bad two.
But again, the funny thing with Red Bull is, though, they've got all of the monies.
Exactly, yeah.
So it never hurts to have more.
Oh, no. It never hurts to have more, but I would prefer...
Are we allowed to say that being on the Isle of Man?
Yeah.
All right. Just checking.
I would prefer to have a Fernando Alonso.
It's fine
in a
if you
car
say it out loud. It's just we have to keep it
Liazzi.
quiet. Very true.
I mean, Max Verstappen is the first big boy Red Bull driver not to come through the junior program in the lower formulas.
Yeah, you wouldn't believe that if you listened to them, though, would you?
Oh, we've owned him since he was a fetus.
Yeah.
No, you actually haven't.
So I don't know. It just doesn't seem to be working for them at the minute, and I prefer Kvyat should never have been in that car.
You just want to see, basically, we want to see Red Bull as a real team, not a meat grinder with a car at the end.
Yeah.
So that's the Toro Rosso. We'll get onto Red Bull a bit later on.
Next one up is Sauber.
They had no okay-ish race. At one point, it looked like Ericsson could score points, but again, he was driving a Sauber and he fell backwards through the order.
Once again, it's the bizarre split pit strategies. Early safety car, bring one of them in.
Yeah, Verline actually was as I say, flying at one point and then dropped back a bit, and I don't know if he had a car issue. I remember hearing something about a turbo issue.
Yeah, but don't forget, was he third to last?
Verline?
Ahead of the...
at the end of the race, yes.
Yeah, ahead of the Toro Rossos, third to last.
No, ahead of Stroll and Grosjean.
Oh, right,
yeah,
okay.
Stroll, who actually stopped in the pits, but we'll get to that.
Terrible race for Stroll.
Yeah, awful. Because it's not a point as we were saying before, it's not a point and squirt circuit, so that's what he's good at.
It involves a bit of skill.
Yeah.
And you always got to get that one in, haven't you?
And long sweeping turns. You know, turn for a long time. Don't just turn your car into a corner and then make it go fast again.
Yeah.
Which is what Lance Stroll appears to be excellent at.
More of a scale extrix driver than a Formula One driver.
Possibly. We'll know more about that at Abu Dhabi, won't we? When because that's more point and squirt than Interlagos is quite a lot more.
But we're talking about the Saubers at the moment.
Yes. and
brought back onto the track, Stan.
And Ericsson 13th and Verline 14th. They did finish line astern. Still no points, and you've got to say, really, barring shenanigans at the last race, that's their best chance of scoring any more points, or Ericsson's best chance of scoring any points over.
Ericsson is done at the end of this season.
That's got to be it.
Yeah, I just can't.
Charles Leclerc was in the garage at Sauber this weekend. He did FP1.
Yeah.
And he was in there during the race as well.
Talking to young drivers
doing tests, very gone as well, isn't he?
Very strange for Haas putting Giovinazzi in the car for FP2.
Yeah, that's unusual.
Because it's normally your reserve driver or your young driver gets FP1. But yeah, Friday afternoon for Tonio Giovinazzi.
Yeah, and of course FP1 for George Russell in the Force India.
Yes.
But we'll...
5/10 off the other Force India, I think, wasn't he?
Something like that. But it means his
first go.
He's never been in that team or that car before, still learning how it sets up, so not a disaster.
No.
The last thing he drove was a full big boy Mercedes.
Yeah. Apparently Verline's on his way out of the team as well, isn't he?
It's
looking
like it, because I mean he is on the Williams list, and according to Paddy Lowe, we're looking at everyone without a contract, and he's
Except
on that
Palmer.
list, so therefore, his name never comes up.
And Ericsson.
Yeah, I'd imagine he's not on the list.
Yeah. And it's looking like Sauber could just be Ferrari Junior next season.
Yeah, Leclerc and Giovinazzi hotly tipped to be both the seats at Sauber for next year.
But we've been saying for a while that Verline's looking like he's on his way out, and he's going to have one last shot at DTM in the last ever DTM season.
Well, that might spur him on. That might fix him almost, if you will.
It's like, this is what it's like to have cars behind me that I don't have to move out of the way to let pass.
Or it could completely break and being dropped out of Formula One.
Yeah, but or if he goes to a DTM and he kills it, he could boost his confidence so much that he comes back to Formula One sort of like rejuvenated.
Has anybody?
Oh, I've been in a good car for a year after spending 2 years in awful cars.
Yeah, but has anybody been in Formula One? That I don't mean Alonso or Webber in this, who debuted did well, in a bad car. And then we found them, like, Alonso turned up in Renault, didn't he? Which 1 or 2
He was
years.
a reserve driver for his first year at Renault.
Yeah.
Has anyone come into Formula One, been poor, dropped out of Formula One, and then come back in and actually done anything good?
Damon Hill, when he started, he was third driver for Brabham. Didn't manage every race that season.
No, replaced the lady whose name I can't remember.
Layla Lombardi.
No, Giovanna Amati.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Then dropped out, and then got the Williams test job, then got the Williams job, and didn't do bad.
Right. Okay. Cool. No, I was just wondering. Like, it was just a legitimate question, that, because I was thinking of Grosjean, and
Alain Prost, fired from Ferrari, said the car's shit.
Well, yeah, but he was already a double world champion,
Yeah.
triple world champion.
That doesn't work.
Had a year out.
Yeah.
Came to Williams, won the world championship.
Yeah, that kind of doesn't work. Like I said, did well first, but the
but he had a shit car.
like Grosjean came into Formula One, did badly, came back
Took
into
some
Formula One, and has essentially soaked up a decent seat then for all his career, in my eyes.
Kimi won more world championships before he had those 2 years out than he's won since he came back.
No, but again, he did well when he came in.
Yeah.
Like, is it?
Yeah, talking about
I
somebody.
think Grosjean has looked like a much better driver since he came back.
He's been on the podium a couple of times. Don't forget when Lotus were good for that 1 or 2 seasons.
Yeah.
Grosjean had a few third places.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, he's not had a car to
He was also
improve on that.
extremely crashy as well.
Yeah,
in
he
those
was.
times.
Yeah, he was. He nearly killed Fernando Alonso and Lewis Hamilton in one corner.
Yeah.
So yeah, we can never quite forget that.
No.
But I mean, Sauber, as we were talking about before, that's their best chance of points gone. Surely, I mean, they can't and won't get any points unless everybody crashes into each other at Abu Dhabi.
Unless it rains in Abu Dhabi and nobody's got any wet weather tyres apart from them.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm going to put money on rain at Abu Dhabi. I'm saying it now.
That's a brave decision.
It rains.
What was it you
But
said?
you've been right every time before, haven't you?
So far.
Yeah, but you're going to get more of a return on that than if you put like sand.
Yeah.
If you bet on sand,
I'm going to find somebody who'll take my bet of rain at Abu Dhabi, given that it only rains 1% of the year.
I'll take your bet.
But as you said,
A
an
reputable-
F1 weekend is only 1% of the year as well.
Of course it is.
So if the two 1% clash, that's a 1 in 10,000 chance.
Well, there you go. 10,000 to 1, I'll take that.
Moving swiftly on, McLaren.
McLaren. Van Dorn, victim of Magnussen at the beginning.
He had one good corner.
Well, I don't think that he
And
had
then-
one good corner.
Well, no, he went off in turn 2, so he must have had one good corner.
Well, no, he may not have been a good corner. He may have been an okay corner.
Successful corner.
Yeah, all right.
50% of all Stoffel Van Dorn's corners were taken on the track.
He got to the other side of
Yeah.
half of the corners.
Yeah, he took that first corner, he didn't crash. That's how a corner works.
Quietly, like, apart
In
from
turn 1, he didn't crash.
In turn 2,
Someone crashed.
someone crashed into him.
Right, if anyone can get the TV show that we're referencing with that, I will send them, because I forgot to offer these on the Patreon show, I will send them one of the free CDs from a random band that I got at the festival I was at this weekend. So send us an email with what you think that show was that we were just referencing then.
Oh, I got
Get
a
it right.
random CD as well this weekend. You can have that one to go in your pile.
Right, so yeah, if you can guess what that is, send us an email, 3legs4wheels@gmail.com, or drop us a tweet at 3legs4wheels, and you'll get a CD from my random collection and one from Lee's random collection.
Yeah.
Sounds fair?
Sounds
fair.
So anyway,
McLaren.
McLaren. That was last year's catchphrase.
It was.
Well, it wasn't a great weekend for Stoffel, really, was it?
No, he was very slow in qualifying as well.
I was just going to say, getting knocked out in the second corner of that race was only the second worst thing for him this weekend.
Thing is, he's been very consistent.
A whole second off Alonso in qualifying.
Yeah, but he's been very consistent in races in that he hasn't had many retirements. But yeah, the qualifying pace was poor. Very poor. A whole, as you say, Lee, whole second off Fernando Alonso.
Is Stoffel not getting the retirements because they're just not bringing him in like they've been bringing Alonso in? Because there's no point in Alonso pootling round in an absolute dog of a car, but keep Stoffel out on track because it's his rookie season. So let's get him as much track time as we can.
I think there's definitely been a couple of retirements where Alonso has basically give them whatever the McLaren code is for.
Oh, fuck this.
I'm out of here, like.
Yeah. Multi-14.
Yeah.
Multi-14. I'm breaking down.
Multi-car's a dickhead. Repeat, multi-car is a dickhead.
Yeah, pretty much. So, Fernando Alonso actually had a pretty successful weekend. Lee, you were remarking on his team radio after he qualified. Well, he qualified 7th, but started 6th.
Yeah.
And he was ecstatic with that.
Yeah.
It was, he knew that he was in a strong position to do well.
Mm-hmm.
And as the early part of the race panned out, he found himself behind the hometown favourite, Felipe Massa.
Mm-hmm.
And very sneakily and quite cunningly, as Alonso does quite often during his Formula 1 career, just decided to sit behind Massa, and where he was getting a deficit on the straights, just use the DRS to keep in touch with Massa throughout.
Massa's car was a bit faster, but not fast enough to break DRS.
No, exactly. So Alonso did extremely well, and Alonso's McLaren was quick through that middle sector.
Anyone catch his pit interview after the race?
No, but what I was going to say about Alonso, it was fantastic to see him finish in 8th.
Yeah.
And then straight after, we saw it at the time, the TV cameras, Alonso applauded Massa back into the pit lane because Alonso got there a long time before Massa, taking a long time to slow down, lap waving at all his friends. But
Massa had to try and work out why it had a green flag.
Yeah, I think he thought it was a Brazilian flag. He got that a bit wrong. But it should be a red flag, really.
Somebody can
stop Felipe.
Somebody can Photoshop that, can't they?
I think so, yeah.
Be fixed.
Well, the painting will have a Brazilian flag on it. The retirement painting will have that. It won't be a green flag. But what he didn't see at the time was Fernando Alonso, before he got to turn 1, pulled up alongside Felipe Massa and was applauding him, thumbs up, and basically went through turn 1, 2 and 3 with him, applauding him and thumbs upping. His former teammate at the end of the day.
And then overtook him because he was faster.
Mm-hmm. But Felipe was faster than Fernando. But to be fair, Felipe had a Mercedes engine and Fernando had a Honda.
Fernando has obviously only got one more occasion to be angry at Honda.
Yeah,
and he seized that opportunity at the end of the race, where he said the lack of power and the deficit to the Mercedes was, quote, amazing. And if he said I had DRS, I was in the slipstream, and Massa was still able to pull away from me on the straights. He said, if anything, this should be massively worrying for Toro Rosso.
Yeah, because he knows that when he finishes at Abu Dhabi in a couple of weeks' time, he can walk away from there and he goes, do you know what? I don't have to deal with Honda next year.
I wonder whether he's going to have something to say at the end of that race.
Alonso's winter/summer holiday, wherever he decides to go, is going to be glorious, isn't it? Yeah. Alonso's winter break in I don't know, maybe he'll go to Australia for a bit of sunshine. He's no Honda.
He's going to go back to his driver room, and any team shirt or pair of overalls he's got with a Honda logo, it's just going to be in the skip outside.
But yeah, no, great result for Fernando Alonso. I mean, highest starting position all season.
How many years has he been there? 3 now.
3. It's his third year, and it's going to be him and Stoffel again next year.
So do you know what? It is a bit bad, isn't it? When you consider, obviously Honda haven't fulfilled their part of the bargain, but they've essentially over the last 3 years paid Fernando Alonso $80 million to publicly berate them every weekend.
Pretty much, actually, yeah. I mean, do you remember when the Honda deal was first signed with McLaren? Alonso and Button appeared in the Honda TV adverts, albeit briefly. Don't see Stoffel and Fernando appearing anywhere in any adverts, do you?
They pulled them, didn't they? Oh. They pulled the Honda adverts with Button and Alonso in because they were that embarrassed at how bad it was going. They didn't want Honda associated with the Formula 1 team.
Well, there you go.
That had a Honda engine in it.
Well, yeah, because they did that Power of Dreams advert, and there was going to be a McLaren driving off at the end of it, and they replaced it with a Honda-powered jet.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. So,
but
teamwork makes the dream work.
we used to say it was Mercedes that were powered by dramas if Honda were powered by dreams, but no, McLaren
still powered by dramas.
still powered by dramas or nightmares.
Yeah.
Renault, nightmare time again.
1 point is all they scored, and it wasn't Carlos Sainz's point either.
To be fair, though,
Hulkenberg got that 10th place all on his own. Oh, hang on.
But to be fair, given the fact that they had to turn the engines down, they were expecting a bad race. I think escaping from that race with a point was.
But if you remember,
double finish.
Yeah,
that's
double finish.
not a bad thing considering their recent form.
Yeah, double finish, line to stern. But I mean, do you remember when Hulkenberg had that new floor in? I think it was Hungary, and all of a sudden that Renault looked pretty good at like a twisty circuit with like high core. I was expecting something a little bit more from Renault in Brazil.
Now I didn't realise, and this is why one of the reasons why Renault were powering their engines back. I didn't realise that this is the second highest in altitude race of the season.
Behind Mexico,
which is why they had to dial the turbos back.
And haven't they run out of engines completely? Like, there are no more Renault engines.
This is why Toro Rosso are having to salvage
cobble
parts
things
from,
together.
Yeah.
From reconditioned units rather than new.
Yeah, Frankenstein's engine.
Kind of makes sense, doesn't it? When you're going to start, I know they should have them, but when you're at this point of the season and the last few races, you're not going to spend the money building brand new engines, are you? If you can get away with not doing it.
Yeah. And also, don't forget the engine manufacturers are encouraged not to make too many engines, just to make the ones they've got more reliable to save money, because that's really fucking worked.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then next year it's 3 engines?
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. That's not sport, that to me.
No, it isn't to me either, because everyone's going to have to pootle around so slowly to look after their engines that it's going to be whoever's more reliable is more likely to win the World Championship than whoever is able to go faster.
Do you think we're going to get that horrible situation that we had for a while there? You know, when fuel saving was like mega.
Yeah.
And like the first 20 laps of a Grand Prix was just people
lift
running,
and coast,
and everybody had to do it. Only this time they're going to be they're all going to be racing properly.
Do you know what it's going to be like? Actually, the nearest thing we can compare it to is, remember when I think it was the last season of refueling, and the teams that got the cars that got through
09,
the cars that got through to Q3 had to put their race start amount of fuel in.
Yeah.
And everyone would circulate at a fairly reasonable pace, and then you get the odd hot lap. That's what we're going to get, but for full race distances next year.
Possibly. We'll have to see. But do you know what? I, in a strange way, quite enjoyed the token system for fuel, because I loved the
fuel.
You used to get your credits back, so you got fuel credits depending on how much fuel you used in quali. So I enjoyed. After qualifying was over, because it was 2009, that wasn't it?
Yeah, that was the last year, I think.
And you'd get you say you had Button, which was 4th, but then when you went back and look at the chart, you go, oh, actually he's 4th, but he's got an extra 7 laps of fuel in his car. So it was actually that's really good, that. But
you enjoyed it because you got to see more graphs on screen and more flashy graphics.
Well, I'm never really a fan of numbers. I'm not very good with them.
Because it was the flashy graphics bit that you enjoyed.
Oh, flashy graphics, I'm all over. Yeah,
because they used to have the virtual grid with the time differences depending on fuel loads.
I even noticed that the SkyPad had new flashy graphics this week.
Must be trialling them for next season.
It had a whole overhauled interface.
Very good. No, I'm not a huge fan of refueling, I have to be honest. I was quite pleased to see it go when it went.
Well, refueling made it. The first stint or the first 2 stints were just warm-ups, and the race only really started after the last pit stop,
which was no good. It was too strategic otherwise. Yeah, it was all.
On the other hand, I would argue that now without refueling, races do seem to be wrecked an awful lot more by back markers. Every time somebody's on a charge, like Hamilton this weekend, it always seems to be getting screwed up by back markers. It seems to happen. Every race feels like if it was just 5 laps longer, it might have got interesting. Yeah,
Well,
I know it doesn't stand this weekend because after Hamilton locked up and giving it away from him.
But I think you'll always have that though. I think you'll always have that sort of cars will run to the end of the race to manage that gap and keep that gap. If you got to that point and then they said now there's 5 more laps, Vettel and Raikkonen, for example, may have found themselves a little bit in the shit because Mercedes I think could have gone on a little bit further.
I still think they should have refuel, and I think the difference is they got it wrong. But
it's all calculated, isn't it? It's what I'm saying is it's all calculated to work out that will be the gap. The gap will come down that bit. You can manage that. That's fine. And the gap will be this at the end of the race by lap 71.
Yeah. So
if they can calculate that, that's fine. It doesn't matter if it went to lap 76. They calculate it to lap 76.
Yeah.
So that's just, for me, that's just the way it works out. It's just these days the gaps are a little bit smaller. The gaps are like 2 or 3 seconds rather than go back 10, 15 years when gaps were 15, 20 seconds. It was all calculated to get to that certain point at that on that final lap.
Yeah. See, I always thought when refueling was taken away from Formula One, I think they almost threw the baby out with the bathwater a little bit, and instead of saying, right, it's dangerous, no more refueling, they should have said, how do we make refueling safer?
I do think the races are better without it, but there were advantages to it.
Yeah.
And like you say, qualifying where the person in first wasn't necessarily the fastest driver in the fastest car.
They only had 2 laps of fuel or something like that.
Yeah.
It's just like, how did a Minardi qualify 4th? They're going to have to pit at the end of the first lap. Fair enough.
It shook things up a bit.
Yeah.
Are we done with Renault?
I think so.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Bit of disappointment for Carlos. Bit of a flat weekend.
Bit of a
Probably a
non-event
bit disappointing
race.
for Hulkenberg as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Williams.
We all know what happened to Lance Stroll. He had an awful race.
He just
Pretty embarrassing weekend for him.
he just wasn't there this weekend.
No, locked up all the time, complained of understeer, which his engineer then told him, yeah, you're understeering because you keep blistering your outside tyre.
Yeah.
Just stop blistering your outside tyre and you won't understeer.
Mm-hmm.
And then he claimed towards the end of the race that something was stuck to his tyre. No, lads.
It was a blister.
That was the guts of the inside coming out of the tyre. Was the canvas.
When he said there's something stuck to the tyre, it was just a blister that was on it, and then it delaminated.
And then it went full alien.
Yeah.
But to be, I mean,
he pitted, and I don't think he rejoined the race. I think he pitted with 2 laps to go, and I don't think they sent him back out again.
He probably turns up as finished if it was 2 laps.
Yeah, he does. Yeah,
he was classified as 16th and last.
Yeah.
But 2 laps down.
+2, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't think I think this might there might be a better driver in there somewhere, but I don't think it's good enough, regardless of the improvement. I just can't see it. Do you know what I mean?
I read something the other week where he's only happy and confident when the back of the car suits him.
When the 90-degree turns are 90 degrees and they're short and he can break through the turns and accelerate onto the straight.
Yeah, but
he's no good at these corners where you have to manage your speed going through the turn and then it tightens up again, like happens quite a lot at Interlagos, and he struggled. He likes circuits like, as Dan pointed out, like Azerbaijan. 90 degrees, accelerate, brake, 90 degrees, accelerate. He'll be good in Abu Dhabi if that formula rings true.
Yeah, and I suspect it will. It does seem to be the Tilke type circuits where he can do well. He can get the car doing well there. But your more classic circuits that are a bit more natural and flowing, maybe not so well.
No, he doesn't cope so well on, but yeah, I mean, it's still a long time for him to develop, although it really depends who Williams bring in as their lead driver for next year. Kubica, maybe. Di Resta, maybe.
I think it will be Kubica now. I do. I think.
Well, Kubica's getting a test.
He's getting a third test.
Yeah.
So let's see. To me, that would suggest that they want Kubica, but they're still unsure about it.
They want to see what he can do in this year's Williams. They've seen,
They've seen what he does in 2014 car.
and they've seen what he can do in a 2017 Renault.
Yeah.
But
that to me
Williams is a different
suggests
beast.
he's probably the second best, but there's things that make them think he could be the best.
I think there's things that make them think he might be the most profitable. So if they can manage to find the speed in him to get him in the car, they would prefer him to be there because they know what it will bring.
But again,
possibly, if he was the best, then
He'd be announced.
There'd be no point in giving him the test.
Yeah. No, that's what I mean. It's
Yeah.
Right now, I think that they must know that the best option is Durista. But for whatever reason it is, I think it's probably financial. They want the best option to be Kubica, so they're giving him another chance to become the best option.
Yeah. But I don't think Durista can be the clear best option.
No.
Otherwise, they wouldn't be giving Kubica the chance.
Yeah, but I also, to turn that round again and echo what you just said, Kubica also can't be clearly the fastest, otherwise they would already
They
made their
wouldn't
mind
need
up.
to give him
Yeah.
another trial.
Yeah.
I think the other thing is, which they're not gonna see until they actually get him in the car proper. It's okay giving people tests, and it's okay throwing them around the circuit. And obviously, don't get me wrong, I obviously couldn't go out there and do a fucking race distance, even in testing.
Yeah.
I wouldn't get round the lap. But there's going to be a massive difference between.
No, I've seen it on the PlayStation. You brake too heavy, your tyres will be shredded after 3 corners.
There'd be a massive difference between him doing like a race distance or 2 race distances at a test than there is not just the grueling schedule of going to a race every other weekend and sometimes back to back, but you've got to look at the travel as well involved. All these things take a toll on these people, and that's why they're some of the fittest people in the world.
Yeah. They are athletes.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, let's face it, it's not just Jenson Button that goes off and does triathlons and things, is it?
No, Mark Webber has a triathlon done in his name every year.
Rosberg had a triathlon in him as well.
Oh, I don't know.
I think so.
Rosberg, by the way, posted on Instagram yesterday that he was at the Autodromo Jose Carlos Pache in Brazil. But the picture was of him with a classic Mercedes in Monaco.
Oh.
So I don't know why he tagged himself in Brazil when he wasn't there.
But yeah, I think that might be one of the worries as well, is just over the course of a whole championship, how he'll cope.
Will this test be him in a 2017 Williams?
Yes.
Will that be the first time he's driven a 2017 Williams?
Yes.
I think that'll be the first time we've driven a 2017 car.
No, he's driven a
he drove-
2017 Renault.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where?
Hungary.
Oh, was that? Oh, yeah, of course, I remember now.
So it could be he's looked strong at the...
And the times are public, are they not? Sorry, just to interrupt. The times are public at the end of this test, Abu Dhabi test.
They
I think they will be,
might
yeah, because it's not a private test, is it?
it's the official end of season test. It's,
Yeah.
well, it's laughingly the young drivers test.
Yeah, so 32-year-old, however old he is now, Robert Kubica.
Yeah, so it's Gary Paffett's annual outing.
Yes.
As it has been for about the last 15 years.
Gary Paffett test.
So it could be that he looked good in the 2012 car, and they just want to
2014.
2014 car, and they just want to check how he looks in the 2017 car.
Possibly.
They'll obviously have some data from Di Resta because he did Hungary.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So,
Well, the rest of did the other day the tests, the private tests that Williams had.
but again, that was in a 2014 car.
Yeah.
Don't forget, it's not just the Hungary. They've got data for Durista as well. They've got data for him for all the tracks on the simulator.
Yes.
Yeah, but the simulator and the real life
Different
aren't
things.
always
Oh yeah,
exactly the same.
I know. I don't know.
But
I bet
they
fucking
will be
close.
able to compare what
Yeah.
they are both like in a 2017 car because, all right, Di Resta didn't get a full racing in Hungary,
Yeah.
but they'll have obviously got useful data from him for the laps that he completed
If
during the
nothing
race.
else, back to my point, they'll have a nice benchmark between real life and simulator life.
Yeah.
Between around Hungary.
It might
Yeah.
make the simulator better next year.
Yeah.
Oh, they might get to use the one that Lawrence Stroll's paid for, which is apparently better than their actual F1 simulator that the team uses.
Is it?
Yeah, apparently Lance's private one in the factory is superior to the one that the real drivers use.
That's mental, isn't it?
It's just wrong as well, isn't it? Let's be honest. So yeah, that's Williams and conjecture and
that's Williams, conjecture and Lance Stroll. Felipe Massa,
Good race.
made up for last year.
Yeah.
Gave a positive result, whereas last year was a sad ending. But like sort of there was that dramatic retirement, wasn't there? Walking down the pit lane with the flag and the teams giving him the guard of honour. This year, happy ending, sunshine, brilliant.
I thought that's what he got in Singapore. Sorry.
What?
It was a happy ending, joke, but
It was.
no, I think when you think that Mercedes, Ferrari, Red Bull are streets ahead of every other team this year, he came 7th
Yeah.
behind Mercedes, Ferrari, Red Bull.
Yeah.
So but he was first of the rest.
Yeah.
yeah.
Williams
beat the
have
Force
been-
India, which is what they needed.
Williams have been far from the 4th best team for the rest of the season. They've been
They've been fifth.
they've been
Clearly,
fifth.
they've been fifth at best.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was about to say. 5th at best when you consider, both cars have been knocked out in Q1 at some circuits, in the second half of the season. They've been really off the pace at some circuits, but Felipe made the home advantage count, finishing 7th, staving off attacks in closing laps from Fernando Alonso and Sergio Perez in a much faster Force India. And yeah, brilliant, great result, and great way for him to say goodbye to the home fans for him. Something a little bit odd, which listener James Holman picked up on, and Dan, you spotted as well at the time when he goes on team radio just before the race. He mentioned about it being his last race in Formula One.
Yes, apparently in
Slip of the tongue.
Slip of the tongue. Apparently in the pit interviews afterwards, he was talking about definitely being at Yas Marina.
Yeah. So we'll see. We should see Felipe Massa in that Williams.
Should.
I'd be upset if we didn't, put it that way, because I said it was the worst decision in the world to bring Felipe Massa back at the beginning of this year. Felipe proved me wrong. He put in some very strong performances early on in the season. Yeah, he faded away in the second half of the season.
I'd say, I don't think Felipe proved you wrong. But I think Lance proved you right.
No, it wasn't even that. It was that Felipe Massa was scoring points in races where Williams even back then were looking like the 5th best team, and you had 2 Ferraris, 2 Mercedes, 2 Red Bulls, 2 Force Indias finishing ahead of him most of the time, and he was still 7th, 8th, around about there. So you know what, for a guy who we thought had retired and maybe wasn't even trying towards the end of last season, he's doing all right. He's getting that car in a position that the best position that car could be in at the moment, and you can't ask any more than that. All right, he did fade away a little bit mid-season, and second half of the season hasn't been great. But
do you think he faded away, or do you think that the car did?
I think the car did.
The car did, because Williams have said that they stopped development early.
But we know how moody Massa can get as well, and if something doesn't work for Massa, he doesn't perform well.
I also think the pressure of him thinking he was out the door as well wouldn't have helped.
Yeah,
because the Andrew Benson seems to think that he'd talked himself out of being in the conversation for next year, because he gave Williams an ultimatum that he wanted to know what was going on with him.
And let's face it, Frank Williams is still in overall charge of that team.
Yeah.
And if there is one person in Formula One you do not give an ultimatum to, it's Frank Williams, because you will find yourself done.
Well, I think the thing is, I think Felipe possibly still thinks he's better than he actually is.
Well, he says he's going to continue racing, doesn't he? In other
he says he's going to go Formula E, doesn't he? But he said, obviously, I won't go to Formula E this year, as the championship's just about to start.
Yeah. So, all the best to Felipe. He's got 1 race left.
Which it does look like he will be doing.
Yeah.
I can't help but feel that that's the wrong decision.
Possibly.
What they should have done, if they were worried about the points situation, they should have gone with the safe option for Abu Dhabi and thrown De Rista in the car for the weekend, and then they'd have had a proper comparison between De Rista and Kubica when they throw him in for the test.
Maybe, possibly.
Don't rule out De Resta doing FP1.
We'll see.
I think
don't forget, there's also contracts. It may cost them
Yeah,
not to have Massa.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, good point.
While
yeah.
there's still one or two of his sponsors on that car.
Yeah, yeah, but I mean, it was a drive at Interlagos that was, you know, one of his better drives, definitely.
Yeah, it was definitely. I think it was his best drive this year.
Yeah, put his car in the best place it could possibly be in. He's not
Probably
quite
better, to be fair.
well. No, I mean he's not quite of that ilk of you know, sort of Vettel, Hamilton, Alonso, Ricciardo. You know, who can take their cars much further up the road than they maybe should be.
I do think he was further up the road than that Williams probably deserved to be.
Yeah.
You know, I think he did a good race there.
He did a very good
the
race.
The three top teams all had both cars finish.
Yeah.
He should have been probably behind a Force India because the Force India is a better car.
Yeah.
He was ahead of the only Force India on track. That's a net gain.
Yes.
You know, 9th is his expected position.
Yeah.
He got 7th.
I think if he'd had like the Force India behind him instead of Alonso behind him, it might have looked better than it was, because he'd have been just out doing another competitive car. But what you're seeing with him and Alonso being on track at the same time is two people outperforming the vehicle. So it's not.
Yeah.
You just look at Alonso in that case, don't you, for what he's doing,
and think he's managing to keep up with
Yeah,
Felipe
yeah.
Massa.
Yeah, it's like, oh my God, Alonso kept up with a Williams and kept a Force India behind him.
Yeah.
Whereas Massa finished in front of a McLaren.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talking of Force India, for the first time, an Esteban Ocon retirement. So
Yeah.
I wasn't the only streak that got broken last week.
No. Was it 27 races in a row?
Yeah.
And
just like when Max Chilton lost his streak of finishes, a lap one crash.
Yeah.
So, a bit like the Kvyat gets sacked and Verstappen wins a race thing, when you don't do a 3 Legs 4 Wheels podcast, Ocon retires.
Yeah. Are you listening, Force India?
Yeah.
You may have to pay me to do this.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or
we may have to stop betting, and you may have to go on more holidays.
or whatever you're going to be called next year, because apparently Force India are looking at alternatives to the Force One name for 2018.
Force Formula apparently is being put forward, which
Rubbish.
is rubbish name,
Yeah.
isn't it? Let's be honest. Nobody wants a Force Formula. That doesn't even make sense.
I don't want formula forced upon me.
No, exactly.
You got a baby to do that on.
Yeah.
Force One was looking like the favourite, wasn't it? Because they registered the company name,
Or someone.
and
registered the
someone
company
registered it and trademarked it.
Yeah. Bob Fernley isn't too keen on Force One.
Formula Fernley.
Force Manx.
Maybe Trump's offered them a cease and to serve them
Force
a cease
America.
And desist. No, there's Air Force One, isn't it?
Yeah, good point.
So what are they going to be called next season?
My painting van operates under the unofficial name of Paint Force One.
Team Brexit.
Well, they'll get sponsorship from that crappy energy drink that I found the other week. The official, allegedly, Brexit energy drink.
Yes, apparently.
Yeah, it leaves a sour taste in the mouth and really disappoints.
Where's it made? Europe?
It is made in England,
Oh, fair enough.
but I found it in a shop next to all the German and Polish snacks,
Okay.
which was either incredible trolling or a massive mistake.
I'll go with
A
both.
bit like the whole campaign.
Pretty much. Politics aside,
They should serve it on the Euro stuff. Hurry on.
Sergio Perez?
Sergio Perez, 9th, outdone by a McLaren.
Apparently, even though he looks after his tyres incredibly well, had to manage his tyres until the very end of the race. Which is why he didn't catch the Alonso-Massa battle until a couple of laps before the end. So, Checo.
This is everything unusual for Force India then. Ocon
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah.
finish. Perez struggles with tyres.
I don't think he was struggling. He was told
Who
to
are
manage
you and
them.
what have you done with that team?
Exactly. He was told to manage them. He may have been fine.
Yeah, he might have just been given a massive stint.
Yeah. He was just told to manage the tyres and wasn't allowed to attack until near the end of the race, which is he closed the gap up very quickly.
Yeah.
I think he kept it about 4 seconds, so he didn't have to deal with any turbulent air. But then when he closed on Alonso, he was really close.
I wonder, because I couldn't work this out during the race. I know we've moved on here, but just quickly because it's the same three of them. I couldn't work out whether, if Alonso had got past Massa, whether he could have gone off down the road a bit further.
No, I don't think he would.
Have fucked him up because we didn't have the DRS behind Massa.
Yeah, that's what it would have been.
Yeah.
Massa would have DRS'd him back, I think. I think Alonso was trying to time his run so that he
just did it on the last lap.
Yeah, last lap, and then defended like Alonso.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it didn't quite work out for him. So yeah, strange mixed bag for Force India. Ocon, of course, retiring, and Perez 9th. Who's next on the list?
George Russell making his FP1 debut.
Well, yeah, it was a very late announcement that he was. I don't know. We don't know. George Russell
Day before, wasn't it? Day before?
2 days before.
I think it was Wednesday.
Yeah, George Russell and Mercedes
Took it for
may
a
have
drink
known
on
about
Tuesday.
it weeks in advance. Yeah, they may have known about it for a long time, and all of a sudden George Russell was doing FP1, as we said, half a second behind Esteban Ocon. But
Which isn't great, but it's not bad either.
no, it's not a disaster considering that it's his first time in that car, in that team. They will operate completely differently from anything else he's been involved with, especially anything else he's been involved with in Formula One. So, half a second off, all right, okay, he's not.
He probably got the instruction: "Was skint. Don't use too much fuel, unlike you did in the Mercedes."
Yeah, he's maybe not, Max Verstappening it in his first go in a Formula One car, but he's also not Lance Stroll either. Where he's just crashing every time he turns the wheel. Solid enough. We'll see how he does in the next FP1. 'Cause I believe he's doing FP1 in Abu Dhabi as well.
I wonder if, with him being a Mercedes driver, I wonder if he's in half a conversation with Williams.
I wouldn't think so
I
because Stroll and Russell.
I don't think they'd do that. Williams need more experience. At the moment, they've got. You can't really have somebody in the second season and a rookie in a team like Williams. That's a Toro Rosso thing.
Yeah, maybe. I just don't. I don't know if Williams are out of options. They haven't got the safe option. And none of the options are a safe option.
I think if you were going for a young Mercedes driver, it'd be Verline.
You think?
Rather than Russell.
At least he's got.
At least for 1 year.
At least he's got a couple of seasons of experience under his belt.
I would go with what Dan says, yeah.
Yeah, but that's if Mercedes give that as the option. I can't help but feel that Mercedes think Vela might be a failed project.
It's hard to tell because
They wouldn't move Ocon because Ocon's in a better place being in Force India anyway, so he's fine. I think just the fact that they're pushing for Russell to get like P1s with Force India, which hopefully you'll end up doing next year as well. That suggests to me that they're trying to get him into a Formula One car sooner rather than later.
don't forget he's never run an F2.
Yeah, I know that, but I mean neither did Max Verstappen.
Yeah, but he was in Formula. What was it? Renault 3.5.
What was Russell before?
No, wasn't Verstappen European Formula 3
Was he
before?
European Formula 3?
Is that where Russell's just come from?
GP3.
GP3 Russell's just come from. It's not a massive difference there.
Same cars as Formula 3.
Yeah.
Just a different
spec.
Yeah.
I think I don't think George Russell is out of the question to be a Formula One driver right now and see how he copes with it. I think the problem would be Stroll more than Russell, because like you say, that's.
What if somebody comes through that's a year younger than him with a year less experience and is better than him?
No, I don't think that's the problem. I think it's just the fact that they can't rely on Stroll to be good in his second year. I think if they could rely on Stroll to be good, then they could take a chance on a different driver. But they're taking a chance on a driver anyway.
Just having a look on Twitter for this as well, just sort of seeing if anything's coming out. It's sort of in the last 6 hours, there's a couple of very unreliable sources speculating, not confirming, so it's not really news, that Robert Kubica will drive for Williams on a race-by-race contract in 2018. Official confirmation expected soon. And apparently this is from the French media.
Oh, is that the Canal Plus thing?
I don't know if it's Canal Plus. I haven't actually seen anything from Canal Plus. This is all independent Formula One accounts. I'm just having a quick look on Twitter.
Do we have
Twitter.
to say Plus really weird? Can
Canal
we not just
Plus.
say Plus?
Well, that's what they call Canal Plus. They're French. Otherwise, I say Canal Plus. But it's Canal Plus. So yes. So that
Yes, I think, just to piss Lee off, Canal Plus had a story...
Plu.
The S is silent.
it is from Canal. Yeah.
They had a
They're
story
very reputable.
earlier today that Verline to Williams was confirmed.
Ooh.
However, that's been denied by Patrick Head. Do I mean Patrick Head? I don't mean Patrick Head. Who do I
Paddy
mean?
Lowe?
Paddy Lowe, thank you.
So he's denied that, and then now it's come out that are they bored and are just putting different drivers in that Williams seat
Do you know what?
until they get it right.
That's the safest option, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the safe option they've
So
got.
the media people are being like, it's their line, and then Paddy Lowe's going, it's not their line. And then
I think Paddy Lowe's seeing what the reaction on Twitter is and then saying
Kubica, and I can't confirm that it's
And
Kubica. He can't confirm it's Kubica. It's the rest of them? We're going to put out reports that it's not the rest of it. It's Kubica. We know it is. Point fingers at Paddy Lowe, everyone. He just gave the game away.
But that's the safe option we hadn't thought of, isn't it?
their line.
No,
Race by race.
race by race, because they've still got Darista there in case they need to plug somebody else into the car if Kubica can't handle it. But they still get to try the
ultimate comeback.
Yeah, well, and the fact that there was great potential there,
Yeah.
so they still get to see whether that potential is actually usable now, and if it's not, they just put Darista back in the car. The only thing I think they could worry about is if it turns into some sort of PR shitstorm for them.
There's two things to worry about. One is a PR shitstorm. The other is if it's a race-by-race contract and he's really good,
Yeah.
then he's only got a contract to the next race and a different team can come along and say, we want you for the rest of the year.
Mercedes.
Schumachering, I think, is the technical term for that. Because that's what happened to Michael Schumacher.
Is that with Jordan?
With
He had a
Jordan.
race-by-race contract with Jordan, impressed that much at his
Benetton.
debut, and then Benetton went, yeah, we'll have him, here's some money. And Schumacher went, yeah, all right.
And Schumacher then went on to become Martin Brundle's teammate for 1992. And
The rest is history.
well, apparently he learnt an awful lot of Martin Brundle before he then led.
How to threaten coach drivers.
Yeah, but he then
How to throw up in the Mercedes garage. These are all things Martin Brundle's done this
they
year.
have. Yes, it's a good
Crashing
point.
at every corner or every famous corner in the world.
Well, Michael Schumacher did his fair share of that too.
Maybe
Before he started getting
learn
good.
from Brundle.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving on, then we got Red Bull
Moving
with
on, Red
a
Bull.
5th and 6th place finish.
5th and 6th, but an incredible,
Great
incredible
storm
showing
through the
from
field.
Tony Ricciardo.
Seeing as he's
Starting-
facing backwards at turn 2.
Started 14th, by the end of the first lap was 17th, and then 6th.
Yeah, but 17th and quite far behind because of that, as I say, the whole facing backwards thing.
Yeah.
The safety car kind of helped him.
Yeah, no, good point. Yeah,
But quietly, a much better race than Max, I think.
yeah, fantastic. I mean, Max was complaining a little bit, wasn't he? Sort of, come a pit. Like,
It's
well,
just never there for him, was
yeah,
it?
he's like, well, why do you want to pit? He says, well, Danny's really far behind me. It doesn't matter if I pit or not.
I think that was fair enough.
Yeah.
Because when you look at what happened to Stroll with his tyre delaminating,
Yeah.
Yeah,
you know,
he had
it's-
there was a 45-second gap between Max and Danny. That was 2 free pit stops pretty much, and like, oh, don't come in. But I'll get to the end of the race for definite if you
Yeah.
change the tyres.
Yeah.
It's like no brainer.
I think the argument that Sky put forward was if he didn't pit, then if any of the top three had an incident, he'd still be poised to take advantage of that.
Yeah.
Whereas if he's 20 seconds back,
if his car was that hard to drive, then it would have had to be a big incident.
Yeah.
For him to capitalise on.
But look at how quickly Hamilton passed Verstappen and went down the road from him.
Yeah.
As soon as Hamilton got past him,
fucking gone.
Within a sector, he was 2 seconds ahead of Verstappen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, I mean, Max didn't have a bad race by any stretch of the imagination.
Actually, it's
he
just
didn't have a Max race. Though.
Didn't have a Max race, yeah.
It's just occurred to me why Red Bull wanted to keep him out. His tyres were shot. There was a danger of him going off and crashing spectacularly. That's the Red Bull way of doing things. We can play it safe, and I can definitely finish in 5th.
Or I
could finish on fire. Fire.
Yeah, there was one listener has asked us on the Facebook page as to whether or not Max brought himself into the pits without confirmation from the team.
That's what it looked like on the TV coverage, certainly on the Sky side of things, because
he was told not to box, and then he did.
Yeah, 1 minute it's like, don't come in, you can't come in, don't come in, you don't need to come in. Oh, he's in the pits.
Yeah.
We don't hear every radio message.
That is true.
I don't think it would have been that, because if he had just drove in the pits, we'd have had that camera shot of a stationary Red Bull while they're scrambling around to get tyres.
Yeah, like Austin last year.
And if there was a safety car in those last few laps, then he would have been on fresh tyres behind the leaders, and
could have worked out well.
Either to have a massive crash just before the end of the race.
No,
we've seen massive crashes that cause the end of the race.
Fisichella win.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
No, I think they did the right thing bringing him in, because it was a guarantee, and I don't think there'd have been anything major happening with the 4 cars in front of him, because
there wasn't. We know that for a fact.
Yeah, but I don't think there wasn't really a chance of it being, even at that point, because everyone would have just been Hull station.
And if it wasn't for Lewis Hamilton sliding through the field, Danny Rick could well have gotten driver of the day, because his performance, as we say, facing backwards at the beginning of lap 1, and then keeps it going and ends up finishing 6th. It's a great drive again from Danny Ricciardo, who is determined to make that Red Bull team, even though Max Verstappen is more spectacular and more explosive in his driving style. He's determined that Red Bull team will not favour Max Verstappen over himself.
I don't think he's going to have any say in that decision.
Yeah.
They are going to completely number 2 him, and I don't think he'll sign next year. I think 2019 we will see Danny Rick in a Mercedes.
I do. Yeah.
I don't think we will. I don't think Ricciardo could go to Ferrari. I don't think he could go to Mercedes. I don't know where he would go, to be honest with you.
I think Mercedes would take him.
Yeah.
And he went in to Vettel's Red Bull and beat Vettel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't believe there's any reason why he can't go into Hamilton's
Mercedes.
No,
it's just that I think Hamilton. Mercedes. I think Mercedes will have Ocon on their radar if they ever want to replace Bottas. Possibly Wehrlein in the future. Who knows?
Possibly Russell.
Possibly George Russell. I don't think Danny Ricciardo is really on Mercedes' radar. Much in the same way as Ferrari. If Raikkonen goes at the end of next year, fine, fair enough. Maybe Danny Rick could switch to Ferrari, but that's his only open door. I think it's the only one he's got left. And if that door gets closed because, let's say, Giovinazzi or Leclerc really impressed next year, maybe, then they end up signing somebody, maybe even Sergio Perez, maybe, or they snatch Esteban Ocon from Mercedes. Ends up being a Ferrari driver.
Renault might not be a bad shout.
No, Renault might not be a bad shout either.
Come 2019.
No, because there'll be a works team.
Yeah, Hulkenberg will be getting ever longer in the tooth.
But you want to hold on to Red Bull whilst they're going through that transitional, perhaps 1, maybe 2 years with Honda, whilst Aston Martin are waiting in the wings to come in 2021. It's a long wait.
There's another team that could be a good shout. McLaren.
Yes, that's a good point. Wherever they end up with a Renault in them.
and whether or not they decide to
or
make
with a
their own.
Cosworth in them.
Yeah.
They have actually said they may even consider making their own engines, but they'll only do it for themselves. They won't even, under FIA rules, provide an engine for a team who hasn't got one. They will only do it for themselves and in-house. Because the bits have been standardised. I mean, it's not been confirmed, but Zach Brown said, well, we'll it's looking okay at the moment, but we'll wait until the new regulations are a little bit more rounded off. But there's no reason we can't.
I don't know. I think I can see Ricciardo moving up the grid. My money's on Mercedes. He will be replacing Bottas.
I don't believe that somebody as sought after by Max that, depending on Vettel's contract, because we know he had an anti-Alonso clause, didn't he? Given how he's regarded on the grid, you've got to think that from any team there would have spoke to his management. Force Indy would have spoke to Max Verstappen's management because that's just their job to do that sort of thing. I think there would have been an open door for him at either Ferrari or Mercedes. If he signed his contract for what would it be 2019 when it was up. He was in for next year anyway, wasn't he?
Yeah.
I think there'd be an open door for Ferrari or Mercedes for him, but he's chose to stay with Red Bull. I don't believe that with that power behind his contract negotiations, that he wouldn't have been able to negotiate himself a number one driver, as part of that contract. That number one driver probably only starts when his new contract starts. So Danny Ricciardo's probably in reasonable stead for normal service next year.
But then come 2019,
when the new contract kicks in, I wouldn't be surprised whether that's Team Max and it's contracted to be Team Max.
Could well be.
Would make sense.
Mercedes next. Everyone said Bottas was disappointing, that I've seen on various media, legitimate and social.
Well, they're saying Bottas was disappointing because of Hamilton going from the back to fourth place, and Bottas went from first to second.
Yeah.
Now, there's a world of reasons why Hamilton went from the back to the front.
New engine.
I was going to say, there's what would have been 30 places worth of grid penalties in the back of that car if he hadn't have already been starting from the pit lane.
Yeah.
But still.
That showed two terrifying things.
Mercedes' true pace.
How fast that Mercedes really is when they can just turn everything up and not give a toss. And how fast Lewis Hamilton is when he can just turn everything up and not give a toss.
Yeah.
I'm convinced that I said on this podcast a few episodes ago that I thought that Mercedes have flattered Ferrari by only using their car when they've actually had to use it.
By winning as slowly as possible.
Yeah.
Which appears to be how Formula 1 works at the moment. You've got to win as slowly as you can.
Yeah.
Almost.
Out of 38 starts, that is the first time a fifth component has been used in any Mercedes car. So they have just done the bare minimum so far this season.
Yeah.
And even doing the bare minimum, they've got the Constructors' Championship, they've got the World Drivers' Champion, and then they stick everything fresh and new in the back of the car where it's only got 2 races, when obviously their power units can do 5.
Yeah, so I mean they're gonna have that probably turned up a fair bit for Abu Dhabi as well.
Yeah. And how bloody scarily fast is that combination of a full 100% car and Lewis Hamilton?
Yeah. See, this is why I think that I don't see any reason, especially if Mercedes stays with the lineup they've got. If Bottas can do just enough to be second. And this is the problem I have with Bottas this weekend. If Lewis can do that, fair enough with a brand new engine put in the back of it, then Bottas should have at least been able to try to do something with Vettel and he couldn't.
Rosberg would have won.
Yeah.
Rosberg would have won. Yeah,
he was told to pick up the pace.
Yeah.
Come on then, Valtteri, let's go for it, let's go after him. And the gap stayed at 2 seconds.
And it's the thing is, the fact that he out-qualified Vettel, and he got pole, proves he's got 1 lap pace. But Bottas he's almost like a Massa, where everything looks good to a certain point, then his race pace just drops when everyone else does. Maybe it's a fitness thing. He's a heavier set driver than some of the other drivers. I'm sure he's a fucking uber fit guy, but even
I think a lot of that is muscle.
Oh no,
I think he's more muscly than a lot of drivers.
I'm sure it is, but even so, maybe that extra weight isn't like handy when you're in a car for that length of time in that heat. So I don't know, but it's just there's something not there that isn't a top line Formula One driver, and I don't even think he's not quite there at a like Barrichello level 2 driver either.
I mean, look at...
Well, one thing that isn't there is neck. He doesn't have one.
That's true.
I mean, look at what Lewis Hamilton managed to do. I'm not trying to compare Bottas with Hamilton here.
No, but you should.
They're in the same car, and this is where what I'm getting at here. In that, Valtteri Bottas was told to close a 2-second gap in Interlagos from himself to Sebastian Vettel out front. And he didn't do it. He didn't manage it. In America, the circuit of the Americas, Lewis Hamilton went from being 1.1 seconds down to leading by 0.8 seconds at the end in 1 lap.
And the thing is, I can't help but feel Vettel had more in him than he had to use. So at that point, you're saying, well, it's not the fact that he's not even extracting what he can extract out of his own car.
Maybe, but Vettel said after the race that that was quite on the limit for that Ferrari. It was not as easy as it looked.
Both Vettel and Bottas have something to lose still. Hamilton doesn't.
Exactly.
Vettel and Bottas have a second place in the championship,
and they've still got to play it pretty safe by looking after their cars, making sure there's no damage or anything. Hamilton could have just slid through the field. Well, it doesn't matter if I don't make this. I'm already champion.
Yeah, I think Bottas has got something massive to lose.
Contract,
and his reputation. But I don't think he's doing anything to protect it.
He's got to get his head together over the winter and come back. Come back 2014 Bottas.
How far behind Bottas was Hamilton at the end of the race?
4 seconds.
4 seconds from the pit lane.
Yeah.
Overtaking all those cars.
He's 5.5 seconds behind Vettel when they crossed the line.
All that traffic.
Yeah.
More than one occasion he had to get past fucking Stroll.
2.7
behind Bottas.
That's ridiculous.
Was that behind Raikkonen though?
Hamilton would have minced that race if he hadn't crashed.
There was Raikkonen in between them, but Hamilton was 2.7 behind Bottas.
Well, there you go.
But this is why I'm going to go into a bookies and see if I can get a bet on this, because I'm convinced this is going to happen. Come 2021 is the new regs, yeah. Before the new regulations, going into that season, Lewis Hamilton will be a 7-time world champion. Because he's going to win the next 3.
That's a bold statement to make.
I just don't think the only thing that can stop Lewis Hamilton winning those championships is if he loses his focus, which I don't think he will, because I think Lewis's new focus is beating Michael Schumacher's record. I think that when he lost his composure, when he went a bit party animal with it, it's because he wasn't sure when he equaled Senna what he wanted to do in the sport. And now,
Schumacher looked a long way away.
And I think he's got... This is the reason why I don't think he'll help Bottas if he can win a race, is because he can see those 90 race wins. Or 91
that Schumacher's got,
so I don't believe Bottas is ever going to be able to beat Lewis Hamilton unless Lewis beats Lewis for him, like Lewis beat Lewis for Rosberg.
Yeah.
Brett screwed Brett.
Yeah. And I think Mercedes have more than enough in the bag to keep them ahead of this hybrid era.
It appears to be the case, doesn't it?
Well, next year, 3 engines.
Yeah.
it's going to be reliability that absolutely counts.
Mercedes are fucking bulletproof.
Yeah, which means that everybody's going to drive a lot slower.
Though the Ferraris have been pretty reliable. There's been a spark plug problem, there's been a turbo problem.
Yeah.
But it's not really...
It's not been, oh God, the MGUH has failed again.
I would argue that point by saying, if you've got Kimi's number on your phone, give Kimi a ring and ask him just how reliable the Ferrari's been.
But it's not been the power units themselves. It's been
components of it though.
It's been the anciillary stuff around. It's the stuff that you don't get penalties for replacing that's been failing.
No, but it's still cost them points and it's cost them, podiums and wins.
It has, but it's not giving them 30-place grid penalties.
It's not the Ferrari power unit, is it?
Yeah.
That's
even
fine,
in the Hasses.
It doesn't. They might not be getting the grid penalties, but they're not getting the points that they would have won. And
that's because of problems with the car, not the power unit. You got to separate the Ferrari, chassis and bits that they attach the power unit to from the power unit itself. The power unit.
Yeah, but regardless of that, reliability is reliability. They have an unreliable car.
Yeah, they've got an unreliable car. They don't have an unreliable engine.
No, but again, the Mercedes seems bulletproof,
yeah,
regardless of whether it's engine or car.
Mercedes have got a reliable engine in a reliable car.
Yes.
Ferrari have got a reliable engine.
That's what I'm saying. I don't care what part
in
of
a
it
shed.
is breaking, but it's breaking. So yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm convinced that Lewis is going to win 7 World Championships before we change engines. Someone's going to have to do something, and I think either Renault or Ferrari in the power unit stakes is going to have to do something spectacular.
I don't think Renault are going to manage it because they have massive reliability problems.
Yeah.
They are
at the moment.
At the moment, they are pretty much on a par with Honda.
Yeah.
In terms of engines going pop.
And I think the other thing you've got to remember is the fact that we're looking down new engine regs as well. As soon as those engine regs next year are in concrete and happening, development is going to begin on 2021's engines.
That's why they're trying to keep the regulations fluid as late as possible.
Yeah. But that's going to take resources away from rebuilding these hybrid engines because you're not going to continue to pour millions and millions and millions into engines that you're only going to be using for another 2 years.
Yeah.
So that's why I think the engines we finish next year with, hybrid wise, like what we've got now, will be pretty much the same engines then for the next 2 years. So if they don't close the gap to Mercedes, which realistically, when you look at what Hamilton did in that car, that gap looks as big as it's ever been. It's just maybe their car struggled to follow, and I think they lost something a little bit. Well, at least one of their cars in qualifying because Bottas is he's not been able to get himself in front of the Ferraris consistently, has he?
No, I mean he did a very very good qualifying lap. On Saturday to put it on pole.
This week was fine, and he won me 20 quid.
Yeah.
But I just don't see them coming at them, and after seeing what we saw in Brazil, I think it lends credence to what Bernie Ecclestone accused Mercedes and Ferrari of Mercedes helping Ferrari just enough to make it look like they have competition. All of a sudden, I don't think that any Mercedes engineers have gone round the Ferrari place and gone, just put that bit over there. You'll be much better.
I think if Mercedes have helped Ferrari, it's by not having things turned up full charge.
Yeah, that's what I think it is. Yeah.
And they've just if they've been in the lead, just keep them in at 3 seconds.
Well, yeah, win as slowly as possible, which is what Formula One appears to be at the moment, which is calls
counterintuitive.
Well, no, it's calls for debate as to whether or not that's the best way forward, and a lot of people, Lewis Hamilton included, don't think that it is. He was able to push for the first time in many, many races this weekend just gone, and said, it was like when I was karting, I didn't have to worry about anything. I just pushed really hard and passed a load of people. It was a lot of fun. But Ferrari won the day.
Yes.
Really. Let's be honest. We can't take anything away from a 1-3, really.
Oh, sorry, quickly, just before we move on, because it is Ferrari related. You know how we always say that Mercedes isn't good at following other cars?
Yeah.
does anyone else agree with me now that it might not be following other cars that it's bad at? It's following Ferraris. Because Hamilton had no problem
until he reached the Ferrari.
Until he got behind Raikkonen.
And then he was slipping it. It wasn't just the fact that...
That was just his tyres weren't they?
Maybe.
Yeah,
he did have that lock up, and that's when he stopped going.
I think he'd done a lot of damage to his tyres making up that 15 seconds, was it, to Kimi?
Yeah.
But I can't help but think that he damaged his tyres with the lock-up, because however the air comes off that Ferrari just seems to suck all the downforce off the Mercedes. If that's a Ferrari design, that's pretty clever.
Yeah, make the back of the car work in such a way that nobody can get close to it.
Oh no, not nobody. I mean, actually, it designed in a way that it destabilizes our main rival. Surely that would be not an easy thing to implement, because you've obviously got to get yourself downforce as well. But when you're running wind tunnels of models, would it be a stupid idea to have a scale model of your main rivals behind that car in the wind tunnel to see how the air hits your rival?
But that's quite presumptuous in that, you think you're going to be ahead of them more often than you're behind them.
No, but it's...
it's more a case of, if we get ahead of them, this is what it's going to do to them to keep them there.
Yeah.
You might be overthinking it, but you might be onto something.
Overthinkers always overlook what's actually happening. That's the thing. They always search the possibilities. And in Formula
I'll just
1,
mull that over for a couple of weeks and get back to you.
But in Formula 1, if you overthink something, it's more than likely you've thought of what's actually happening and possibly moved on from it to something else.
Yeah.
It does somewhere in the line of being, this is sensible, and half a mile down the road, that's ludicrous down there, then,
that's probably what it is.
Somewhere along the line there, overthinkers will think of every possibility between, and it exists somewhere between those two places.
But the thing is, it does sound like a massive Ferrari move, doesn't it?
A little. I wouldn't put it past them. Yeah. Let's put it that way. But yeah, Ferrari came out on top, 1 and 3. 21st podium for Raikkonen since his last win.
Wow, 21 podiums since, was it France 2008, his last win?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's now, I think that's the longest streak by about 8 races from anybody else.
Yeah, there's a season's worth of podiums between his last race win and now. Bear in mind he had 2 years out of the sport as well.
And he should have won Monaco.
Should have won in Monaco. Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that at all. Ferrari'd Raikkonen at that race.
Was it France 98? I'm sure it was more recent than that.
2008.
Yeah, not 98.
France 2008.
France 98 was the
last French Grand Prix, wasn't it?
The France 98 was the World Cup, FIFA World Cup.
It was, in fact, Belgium 2009.
Belgium 2009. Sorry, France 2008. I think it was the last pole before he got pole. Then
I went to that race. Every time I've ever been to Spa and Kimi's been driving, he's won.
I remember that. I had to text you what was going on because you couldn't get any data.
Yeah.
Should we go to Belgium?
I'd love to go to Belgium.
Belgium 2009. What were we doing for that race then, Paul? We were watching that in the sea terminal.
We were watching that in the sea terminal, watching a christening that got hijacked for a wedding.
Yes.
Yeah.
We
left with lots of champagne.
Correct. I tucked 2 bottles inside my jacket, which at the time had very deep inside pockets, which didn't show on the outside, just the way they were sewn. Bottle in each pocket, hood up, walked off the boat with my jacket closed. Yes, two bottles of free champagne. Get in.
It was just like being on a podium.
Yes, it was.
But going back to the race performance, Vettel did enough to win. Drove slowly enough.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, he did have that little bit of a scare with the Bottas undercut, didn't he? Bottas was very, very close to him.
But he just, as soon as he got in front of him, he just left him.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he put the hammer down. Did his own hammer time.
Yeah, and realistically, you would have thought whenever somebody comes out the garage like that, you always think, well, the car behind
has the momentum.
Tires are heated up, brakes are heated up, but I shouldn't have been dropped like that.
No, it was the gap was put back up, wasn't it, to a couple of seconds within a few laps, and it stayed at that until the end of the race. So all props to Sebastian Vettel. A little bit of look what you could have won, but his first win since Hungary though, which is crazy. If you remember the win in Hungary left him, was it something like 10 points clear in the championship, something like that, if not a bit more. I can't even remember. It was like July, August time, something like that. And the turnaround that has happened since then just goes to show how mighty Lewis Hamilton and that Mercedes team are in the second half of the season.
Yeah.
And let's not forget that the suspension taken off them.
Yeah. And they didn't understand their car for the first 3-4 races of the season.
And that same suspension that was took off them was took off Red Bull, and that had Red Bull like 30 seconds off the pace, didn't it, the first race? So
and why they've got
that's what it was worth to them.
And that's, if you remember our interview with Dave Daddario some podcasts ago now, that's why that Red Bull run their asses in the air and their noses running into the ground.
So, I don't...
The car you're talking about there?
No, the people.
Not when they go for a 10k.
No, just their people. Yeah, when they just want doing their track walk, asses in the air, noses on the ground.
I try to think what goes on in your head sometimes. All in all, good race.
Great race. Not quite as dramatic as 2016. When
Not
we
quite
had
as long as 2016.
No, when we had all those stoppages and Max Verstappen being Max Verstappen and cementing his place as
as a great driver.
Yeah. As a top driver, and
Roman Grosjean showing how crashy he was because he managed to do it before the start.
Yeah, and some people have been on social media to me just saying, why isn't this the last race of the season? It always provides a good race, doesn't matter what the conditions are, who's in what position. There's always good racing at Interlagos. Whereas Abu Dhabi tends to be a bore fest more often than not.
Money.
That's exactly what my response was.
Millions of reasons.
Yeah, millions of US dollars.
Hundreds of millions of reasons.
Just go through a few comments that we've had from various people. If I can find it. Where's it gone? Let's have a look. Right. Ocon DNF,
Yeah. Saw that.
Yeah, James Holman said, interesting on the radio before the race, Felipe said his last race in F1, Kubica at Abu Dhabi, but no, that's been proved not to be the case.
It's not been proved.
It's kind of showing.
It'll only be proven when
case.
Felipe Massa turns up in Abu Dhabi and sits in the car.
Yeah.
Jack Patterson says, Toro Rosso, Renault and Haas separated by a total of 6 points. Who do we think is coming out on top?
Not Haas.
Not Haas. If it's Renault, then the conspiracy theorists and French toast will be doing a lot of tongue wagging.
You just got to roll the dice, haven't you? Really, to be honest with those three teams, I think Renault will come out on top out of the three of them.
I think there's a chance because it's looking like Brendan Hartley's going to have to take another penalty in Abu Dhabi.
Oh, good God, again.
Yeah.
Well, I think the top and bottom of it is that out of those teams, Renault have got the best drivers.
Yeah,
the cars.
That's what I'm basing it on.
Yeah, the cars are all pretty like even, but Renault have got better drivers.
Yeah.
Nijbet says a little bit of Alonso praise, please. Well, definitely.
Oh, absolutely, he deserves it. Yeah.
Yeah. Matthew David, total letdown from Haas.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can't argue with that. Jeff Leopold, Kimi is only 7 points behind Ricciardo. What's the chance he pass him into fourth in Abu Dhabi? It just depends on what state their respective engines are in.
I would guess that because they're not going to have to hold back, and the old Red Bull does go well around Abu Dhabi, doesn't it?
Usually, yeah. It's again 2017 cars. We unknown quantity really in certain conditions. We saw the biggest gap we've seen between 2016 and 2017 at Interlagos, as rightfully pointed out in one of the race previews by Fernando Alonso.
Didn't Lewis Hamilton break the all-time lap record in like the first couple of laps of FP1. He did it in the first 10 minutes of the session. I know it was in the first 10 minutes, but I'm sure it was like on his second or third lap around.
Possibly. I know the official lap record beforehand, race lap record was 1 minute 12 something.
Montoya.
Yeah. Montoya, and that was broken, completely smashed.
I didn't see any of FP1.
Yeah.
So the only thing I saw this weekend was the race. So
I didn't see any of FP1, but I kept up on Twitter because I wanted to see how George Russell was
although
doing.
while FP1 was going on, I was watching Tai Keto, and they are still really good after 25 years. And everyone else goes, who?
Exactly.
Who the fuck is Tri-Kettle? Why would you need 3 kettles?
Lots of
one
coffee.
for your vegetables.
One for your vegetables, one for your eggs.
No, don't put
One
them in the
for your
eggs.
noodles.
No, you poach eggs in a pan.
No, not if you live in a bed sit.
Yeah, but you got to get.
That's the only reason you'd have extra.
Yeah, but you got to get the water boiling
stuff.
first to poach the eggs. So really and truthfully, it's a lot quicker if you boil the kettle and then just finish the water off on the hob. Then you put your eggs in once it's.
But you only need one kettle for that.
I knew somebody once
Anyway.
that didn't have the nicest of places to live, and they had a special kettle for super noodles.
Nice.
Moving swiftly on, everything else that's on the running order on the news section we've already covered. Toro Rosso and Renault.
Tyre
Test cancelled. Cubit's a third test, and the first thing that is on here that we've not talked about is next year's tyre regulations.
Yes.
Could be up to 8 different compounds.
Now there is a softer compound on the way than ultra soft, but they're also going to shift all of the compounds about 2 compounds softer. So,
but whilst bringing in others.
So the hard is going to be this year's soft, and the medium is going to be what this year's super soft is like. And they're trying to close the gap basically on the performance in compounds, and they're going to Pirelli are basically saying you can take 3 compounds to a race, but it doesn't matter which 3 compounds you take. And they're considering whether this I want to hear people's feedback on this as to whether or not it overcomplicates things or makes it easier. I think it overcomplicates it. They're going to.
It confused me when you were talking to me.
They're going to try and put forward renaming the compounds rather than.
Well, they're bringing in the pink stripe ones for next year, and they've set a poll up for people to name it, and it was like Mega Soft, Hyper Soft, and Extreme Soft.
Yeah.
Although I've seen lots of tweets from listeners tagging us in it, keep doing that, saying
Kitten Soft. Absolutely, Kitten Soft is the way forward. But there's also talk that if they bring in a couple of compounds, the names will get too confusing. So there's talk that they might go from compound A up to compound H, with compound A being the hardest, because A hard starts with an A clearly, and soft starts with an H.
So it's different tyre preparation, so it could go up to preparation H.
It could do.
Will
That'll be a
Buxton?
pain in the arse.
Will Buxton had his own poll for what they should call the new tyres.
Yeah.
Would you like to hear
What were his options first?
I'll go through them from the lowest to the highest. That's
go on then. So so not very many votes.
5% of the of the voting public said ultra medium.
Okay.
18% said ultra mega softish.
Right.
I'm sure that's a Japanese cartoon series.
Third, with 26%, said unnecessary. And 51% of the voting public decided they should be called Steve.
That's all right, but he's stolen that joke from Crofty for saying that the tyre compound should be called Dave.
Lee, I like your idea. Pirelli just bring 3 compounds to a race. They can be different ones every time. One of them is hard, one of them is medium, one of them is soft.
They're the same colours, and nobody gets confused.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the hardest tyre of the week gets a white band, the medium tyre gets a yellow band, the softest tyre gets a red band.
Yeah, there's 2 ways to look at it. Either you do that, or you really fuck shit up and you say, these tyres, use what you want. We will publicly say.
That's pretty much what they're saying for 2018.
Are they?
Yeah.
So you
can
could use ultra softs anywhere if you wanted.
Well, you can take 3 compounds with you.
But won't that just be off? That'll be 3 compounds of what they've selected as safe.
Nope. You could take any 3 compounds with you to the race. That's what they're putting forward.
They will have 8 different tyre compounds. Each team is allowed to take
3
tyres from 3 of those compounds.
Would you have to do that like races in advance like you have to do now, or can you do that before the race weekend?
I'd imagine it's a few races in advance because
6 weeks in advance, isn't it?
With F1 choosing what is used for the first 3 as it currently is this season.
Yeah, but isn't it 6 weeks in advance at the moment that you have to have your tyre choices in?
6 weeks in advance, unless it's an official flyaway race, i.e. outside of Europe.
Right.
Then it's 8 weeks.
Okay.
But it's all bloody confusing.
I think that makes it complicated. A to H. We're starting to get used to the names, but I'd be interested to hear what other people think. Especially if you're a casual viewer yourself and you listen to the podcast every now and again, or if you're a diehard Formula One fan who's got what do you think? Do you like A to H?
Well, 5 compounds we're going to have now. You say 5? 8. So let's go. Super soft. Ultra soft.
Yep.
Super soft.
Yep.
Soft.
Yep.
Medium.
And then hard.
Medium hard.
Yeah.
Hard. Ultra hard. Super mega hard.
Or super hard and then ultra hard.
There's too many. There's too many compounds to think of reasonable names for.
And then you just take.
Medium hard sounds like an actual tyre compound. I would take medium hard.
Whoa, careful.
Sometimes I need things to help it get medium.
So medium hard's followed by a stint on semi-soft.
Which of course are the pink banded tyres.
Chris,
hello.
Get the guitar ready. I'm going to announce one more thing beforehand.
Announce one more thing whilst I reach for the guitar. You do an announcement.
Whilst Lee
at your age,
stop it.
How is super
Stop
soft?
It. Well, there's the artificial tyre hardeners that come in a little blue. They've got little blue diamonds on them. We did a competition a couple of weeks ago for a personally signed picture of Guy Martin when he was with the Williams team in Belgium. We asked you to predict what the total aggregate of the times in Q1 for Felipe Massa and Lance Stroll were. Some people did that successfully.
Some people didn't.
Some people didn't. I'm not mentioning any names. Someone that put on Facebook earlier that they wanted to win Darren Entwistle, who only sent one time in for one lap, or he thought that both drivers would do an entire lap of Interlagos in about 35 seconds each. And there was also somebody who broke time in the same way that we do with the podcasts by predicting the wet weather time would be 2 minutes and 76 seconds.
Which would be 3:16, which
Yeah.
I'm wondering if it was Stone Cold Steve Austin.
But we do have a winner. And the winner was Wayne Hines, who predicted 2:21 exactly. And the winning times were the actual time was 2:20.565. So congratulations to Wayne. We're getting Guy Martin to sign that picture for you this week.
Yeah, you're only 0.445 seconds out.
435.
435 seconds out.
Guy Martin will be signing that picture for you this week, and we will get it to you as soon as possible.
Well done, sir.
We will have more competitions soon, including the one that we did tonight, where if you can name the TV programme that we were referencing, we'll send some CDs. Can't guarantee the quality of music contained therein.
No,
because some of them are yours.
Well, they're not mine, technically, because I've not opened them yet, but I've got a vague idea what they sound
That's
like.
not how ownership works.
The things I brought back.
That's ownership.
All right, never mind. Chris gets singing.
that's all you get. I just decided to do that whilst I had the guitar in my hands, and I got it a little bit wrong, but it's fine.
So who's an Inspector Shunter? Who sent this one in first?
Dan Thompson. This first time, I think.
First time Shunter.
Yeah. That's a long time listener.
Hang on, let me get rid of my device. It looks like I might be cheating.
I have 3 wins and 13 podiums.
That sounds like Johnny Herbert.
It probably does, doesn't
Also,
it?
wasn't the first clue I was born?
Not today.
Oh, good lord.
Well, he changed the theme tune. He's changed the questions.
Fair enough.
And also, almost everyone was born, so that's not narrowing it down much.
No, I was born, ...
It's lived.
Yeah, Lewis Hamilton was growing in a test tube by Ron Dennis, but apart from that. Okay, next clue.
I have 1 pole position.
1 pole position. Again, still sounds
It
a
doesn't
bit...
rule out Herbert, does it?
No.
No.
3 wins and 13 podiums does sound a lot like Johnny Herbert to me.
I have won my home race.
That still sounds like Johnny Herbert to me.
Shall we say the first guess is Johnny Herbert, because we always have to give guesses
Yeah.
after 3?
Yeah, we'll go with Johnny Herbert for the first guess then.
I had 49 race starts with my average finishing position being 5th.
And he had more than 49, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, that's suddenly changed things.
With an average race finish of 5th, that's quite high.
Totally ledges.
Yeah, I was thinking Olivier Panis for a minute, but
He only
his
had one-
average wouldn't...
He only had 1 win.
And that wasn't in France, it was in Monaco. Which some people argue is in France, but it isn't.
Maybe they've got it wrong.
He should have won in Canada until he broke his legs.
49 race starts, I'm just thinking, that's not very long.
That's 4 seasons.
Not even that.
Well, don't forget there used to be about 16, 17 race seasons.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's 3 seasons.
3 seasons, really,
Ask
isn't it?
Palmer whether it's a lot of races in your career.
Yeah.
So 3 seasons, 3 wins, 14 podiums.
That's considerable, isn't it?
That's somebody who's good.
So why did they only last 3 seasons?
It could be somebody who's dead.
Unless it was 149.
Would you like another question?
Yeah, go on
Yes,
then.
please.
I am mostly remembered for Formula 1, but I was also associated with touring cars.
Gabriele Tarquini, I remember he was...
Don't think he ever had a win.
Don't think he did an awful lot of Formula 1 races, but he was very, very good in the Alfa Romeo in British touring cars.
Yep.
Was British touring car champion, and I know he did Formula 1 as well. I'm trying to think of other Formula 1 drivers who would have done touring cars, not necessarily British, but...
Well, Nigel Mansell did touring cars.
But had a lot more than
And
49
Will Hoy
starts.
beat him.
Yes, he did. Put it in the gravel at Donington, if I remember correctly.
I was there for that race.
Yeah.
Tricky. Another clue, please.
3 of the drivers I worked with became world champions.
3 of the drivers I worked with.
Worked with. So not necessarily teammates.
We should have asked you for a guess on the last question, so
Oh.
I'll guess now. Oh no, I want to guess now. It's okay. I just skipped one.
3 of the drivers that worked with. I'm thinking it's a team.
I was thinking that as well, but there were 49 starts.
A team that was only around for 3 seasons.
A team that was bought very quickly then. Somebody who wasn't...
Something like Prost, though they're not famous for touring cars.
No. Honda? No.
They've done more than 3 seasons.
Did Toyota win races in Formula 1?
No.
No. Famously, no.
No.
Spent the most money.
Yeah.
I'd like a name, please.
Your name is Lee.
Thank you. I'd like a new name, please.
Or it could be some kind of supplier. Like Avon Tyres, because they're one of the main tyre suppliers in touring cars, and they have been in Formula 1 at some point.
So like,
What's
yeah,
their
decades
home
ago.
race?
Britain.
The Somerset Grand Prix.
If they'd have won a British Grand Prix, then it could have been
in the 60s.
60s or 70s.
Problem with Avon tyres is you could only buy them off someone that came and knocked at your door with a catalogue.
That's the best I've got at the minute.
Yeah, go on then, Avon
yeah,
tyres.
are you Avon tyres is the second guess.
I have been associated with Frank Williams.
So was half the Formula One.
Right. Williams originally started as Wolf Williams Racing. Founded by Walter Wolf from South Africa, and did a Wolf win the South African Grand Prix? And Wolf Racing is where James Hunt finished his career.
Any relation to Toto?
Don't think
Not enough
so.
Fs.
Ah, right.
James Hunt was obviously a world champion.
Yeah.
Worked with Wolf. Retired from F1 in the pits in Monaco in a Wolf car. Weren't about very long because Williams obviously went out on their own and the team struggled. And that's when they finished. And I remember my first scale Electric set had a couple of Wolf cars in it. I am that old.
Wolf. So we'll go with Wolf Formula One team perhaps for now.
So
Plausible.
if it's a person, then it could be Walter Wolf.
You ready for more questions?
Talking of people with that surname, you know that the German football team Wolfsburg used to have a manager called Wolfgang Wolf.
Did they?
Yes.
Amazing. Wolfgang Wolf.
I won my first race.
Definitely rules BAR out.
I won my first race. These are getting more ambiguous.
That's the idea.
No, usually they start off ambiguous and close in on something. This started like quite okay. That sounds like somebody. I won my first race.
It's throwing us off the scent. Like what you do in a Wolf's tracking.
3 wins, and the first race was one of them.
And you know what? For once, I don't think we've hit the stage where people are screaming at us.
No.
No.
Hi, Sean.
Sean will know.
Next clue?
I was based in the UK, but raced under Canadian nationality.
Like Greg Rosetsky. Oh no, he was the other way around.
Nico Rosberg.
No, it was Lennox Lewis that was as English as Mounties and maple syrup.
Yeah. Canadian.
Gilles Villeneuve?
Was he based in the UK? He must have more than 3 wins.
I think he won surprisingly few races.
Let's go with Gilles Villeneuve.
Do we need to put a guess in, or is there any more?
You've got one more.
I don't think he was associated with touring cars, was he?
And Williams. That doesn't make any sense.
Unless he drove a Williams touring car before his F1 career. I really should read more biographies.
Most of the drivers I worked with as children went on to have successful careers.
So some sort of
Children?
Oh, I don't know. I'm completely lost.
So it's someone that worked with Graham Hill and Gilles Villeneuve. But not Jonathan Palmer.
He said most, so...
So if he only worked with 3, then yeah.
I don't know.
Keke Rosberg?
Yeah.
The touring car Palmer's doing well, isn't he?
I'm out.
I would like I'd like a final answer.
So would we.
Yeah.
Yeah, James Hunt doesn't have any motor racing kids, although he's probably got about 70,000 children roaming round.
Yeah.
Only
one public one which bumbles around.
Oh, God. Is this going to be like some kind of Formula One crash manager or something?
I have no idea.
I'm going to have to rush you.
Yeah, I think you are.
Give me an answer. Dance.
Now, Murray Walker commentated on touring cars as well as Formula One.
Yes. He's got a completely clear track in front of him with nothing to obscure his view as the guy drives into a bank.
He was a motorcycle.
He was a motorcycle racer. Did he ever race in any Grand Prix?
I don't know.
I think he did.
Why would he be associated with Williams?
Friends.
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Damon Hill.
Hang on a second. 3 wins.
Won his first race. Or whatever its first race.
Yeah, its first race. Got it. Hesketh. The first race that Hesketh entered in Formula One was a non-championship race called the Race of Champions, when they formed their F1 team and James Hunt won it. I'm going to go for it.
Hesketh Racing.
Are you Alexander Hesketh or Hesketh Racing?
Final answer.
Final answer.
I am Wolf Racing.
Oh, for God's sake! I've done it again. I've firmed myself out of it.
Do you know what the best thing is about that? I'm quite proud that you didn't get that one, because one of his questions was, the Frank Williams one was, I have been associated with Frank Williams and Hesketh Racing, and I thought I won't throw the Hesketh in there because obviously it eliminates it as a possibility.
Lee, you're a git.
Played you like a cheap hooker.
That was a good one though.
Damn it! That was a great one.
Cheers, Dan. When he sent me that one, actually, I looked at that. That's a really, really good one.
That was tough.
Yeah, I liked it.
I'm kind of half proud of the fact that I threw the right answer in there at some point.
Yeah, get more in, because I think I'm running short on some of them. To be perfectly
Hesketh
honest.
didn't race under a Canadian flag.
No, they didn't. That's what threw me.
Sorry,
just realised that now.
it's
yeah.
gone
Also,
midnight and my brain shut
It couldn't
down.
have been
Yeah.
Hesketh either, because didn't Hesketh only do one season?
No, they did. Sure, they did more after Hunt left for McLaren. They carried on. But
No,
they-
no, Wolf race under a
that's
Canadian
why
flag.
Hunt went to McLaren, isn't it? Because the team folded.
They must have done.
Sure, I'm sure they managed.
Yeah.
I'm sure they crawled around for about another few races.
Wouldn't have been 46 though, would it?
Probably not, actually.
Because back then, I'm sure a season was only like 3.5 races.
Right, as it's getting late, if anyone wants to send in total shunts, how will they do that?
Tweet me at a total shunt.
That's the easiest way to do it.
Yeah. And obviously private message.
Private
not tweet.
message.
I know we've got more characters now and everything, haven't we?
And if you want to tweet the rest of us, you can get our main account at 3 Legs 4 Wheels.
At Flood21.
At Danbert.
And I'm at Pablo100.
Yeah.
Look us up on Facebook as well, facebook.com/3legs4wheels. We're there on Instagram. We've got a YouTube channel as well, which we must put something else on at some point. And email us 3legs4wheels@gmail.com.
If you haven't already done it, go and download my other podcast, which is Must See Audio, which is hopefully a comedy podcast.
That's the second plug on this podcast that you're giving your other one.
And you're Ron Burgundy?
It's alright. He had loads of 3 legs, 4th down ones.
Ah, fair enough.
Yeah, that was a comedy podcast. Moving swiftly backwards, Formula Lee. It was Brazil in the dry in a Williams.
Closest I've been to the fast guys for ages.
Penultimate race of the season, and we've ended up with one of those dead heats again.
Ooh!
We had to go to who set the times first. And this one actually matters more because it was for prizes.
Oh, no way. For podiums?
For a podium, yes. Quick rundown of the top 10. Justin Smedley with 110.63. Pete Bull, 110.468. Freddie Brunner, 110.375. Vancha Camping, 110.334. Ryan O'Keefe, 110.219. Top 5, Jeff Sharp. He's switched off this now that he's won the title. And playing Project Cars 2 all the time. Yeah. 110.169. 2 identical times in 3rd and 4th, but Max Williams gets 4th place because he was the second one to set the time of 110.068. because Karl Jarazec did it 9 days before he did. Second place, Chris Olby, 1:10.052, and Ollie Vestley. I think this is his first win.
Oh, well done, Ollie.
1:09.951.
Nice.
109. Good lord. Well
So
done,
rapid.
Ollie. Good
So
effort.
for the top three, sorry Max, there are prizes on the way from Ultraflix. We'll get those out to you as soon as possible, and we need an announcement for the last race of the season.
Where did I land?
Oh yes,
In the room.
Lee, you were 18th, 1:11.169. I was 21st, 1:11.520. Chris was 26th, 1:12.071. And Dan was 29th, 1:12.421. Honourable mention for very last place of all, Jeff Leopold, 36th, 1 minute 30.130.
Wow. How'd it go?
Did he?
He was saving his engine and his tyres for the last race of the season in Abu Dhabi, which is going to be...
We might as well go with the world champions for the end, shouldn't we? Mercedes in the dry.
Oh, I'm glad you said that.
Flooded predicted rain.
Yeah, I did.
So, that is the last of the main 2017 season Formula Lee challenges. The Winter Series will be starting in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, will indeed. Keep
But-
your eyes and ears peeled for that, because it will be fun.
Yep. But in the meantime, you have until 7 o'clock UK time on the 27th of November to get your times into us. Send it by email, send it by private Twitter message, send it by Facebook direct message, and we will get those sorted.
Yeah, are we gonna what we do? The classic ones, I take it. If we work out how many we're gonna do, we'll do a track for every classic car.
Then we worked out there's 12 or something.
There's 12 classic cars, so we'll just have a mixture of 1 and 2 week races.
Yeah. Sounds good, doesn't
Just to get us through to the 2 weeks before Australia.
Yeah, sounds nice.
I will work out a schedule at some point.
Brilliant.
I'm
Spreadsheet.
doing all-
Have a spreadsheet.
I'll have to do another spreadsheet 'cause it's how I tally up the points.
Oh, get in there.
I think that's about it for this week.
That's nice because I want to go to bed.
Well, yeah, it is so late, it's almost early. We'll be back next week. We'll have a preview of the Abu Dhabi race, final race of the season.
Absolutely.
Anything that comes up in the news in the next 2 weeks, if there's anything more on who's going to be racing for Williams,
Yeah.
we'll find out.
I suspect that various outlets will confirm both Kubica and De Resta and Verline and
Palmer.
Kvyat,
No, Palmer.
Russell.
Lando Norris.
Lee Stevens.
Yeah.
Is the Weekly World News still going? They might confirm Palmer.
No, they would confirm Elvis.
Boy.
Elvis.
They will confirm Elvis driving for Williams in that bus that was found on the moon.
That Nico Hulkenberg got there all by himself.
Or they'll the picture that was always on something like that of like an alien shaking Hitler's hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's going around. But it'll be Toto that's put in shaking the alien's hand.
We'll be back next week. We're going to put Lee back in his box and make sure he gets some sleep in the interim because we've just heard what he's like when he's sleep deprived.
Yeah.
We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.